Formally opening the July 11th, 2023 Air Planning Board meeting. First order of business is to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait,
Aye.
I'm sorry. Wait. I made a mistake. Discussion first.
I just want to go
Any
home.
discussion on any alterations to the agenda?
I have none, sir.
And Ken? Nathan? No. Okay, that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Hearing none, chair votes aye, it's unanimous, the agenda's approved. The first item of business is the Easy Street Homeowners Association. Is there a representative of Easy Street here? There is not. Okay. So, just for the formal record, we did receive materials from the Easy Street Homeowners Association asking for, what's the word, dismissal or
Our approval of a
dissolution of the homeowners association. And the simple point of the matter is the planning board just as simply isn't prepared to do that this evening because we need some further input from town council on the appropriate procedures on the homeowners association. So we will defer further discussion of that issue on Easy Street to our next scheduled meeting. That brings us to Air Solar 2. I believe we have some representatives of Air Solar 2 before us.
Yep, they're outside. Can I move to continue the public hearing, site plan modification for Prometheus Power Group, Air Solar 2, 0 Washington Street, filed April 20th, 2023?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. 3 ayes, Ken is recusing himself because he's in the butter. So what we have before us today, and I'm missing my copy, is at the previous meeting, we went over the third-party engineering review and surfaced all the remaining issues regarding progress on Air Solar 2 and what we need to get finally to approval. At that meeting, Kyle Goldsmith, representing the engineering firm, offered to draft a decision for us in light of the fact that we're down a town planner. We were able to get some town planner feedback anyway through some part-time hours, and I did get a town planner's feedback. The feedback was that he felt very comfortable with the decision as written, but also suggested, in addition, to cover the town in the event of failure of the stormwater system. From the previous meeting and further in our discussions, we realized that a surety or covenant of any kind is not the appropriate vehicle for this property. It is private property, it's not going to the town. However, there is exposure to the town with the stormwater system. So what we've asked as the special conditions that we've added is to include an annual inspection by an appropriately authorized professional to provide a yearly report on that system. So that's the main edit. That's really the only edit that was suggested by our planner. I think that the appropriate thing to do and I'm not sure if it would be the council would just go over the decision with us and just over some of the points and then we can deliberate.
Okay, I will be honest, Mr. Chair. After speaking to you very briefly this afternoon, you told me you were making copies of the decision, and so I didn't grab this stack off my printer, including a copy for myself. So would you mind passing a copy over? I'd be happy to go over it because I've reviewed it extensively.
Grab my copy off my printer too in the office where you have it, because I happened to check my email before we came over here.
Just make sure, Adam, I can
hand it back to you, that's fine, I won't write on it. Let me see if it shows the red line changes. It does, yes. So thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, for the record, I'm Adam Costa with Mead, Tallerman & Costa, representing Air Solar 2. We were before you a few weeks ago, and as was just stated, this decision was drafted. I worked comprehensively and collectively with GPR to draft it. We modeled it after the past 2 decisions you've issued for this project. We incorporated by reference all of the prior conditions that are still applicable, but we also included sections for findings that refer to the filings that were made in this case describing the nature of the changes that have been proposed. And then we added a section entitled supplemental conditions. We had proposed 4 supplemental conditions based upon the discussions that have been had here over the past couple of meetings. And as was just stated, Danny Ruiz, your new town planner, proposed conditions 5 and 6, which I reviewed and made some minor tweaks to, but I'm generally comfortable with.
And, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I did get feedback from the town planner on those revisions, and he's comfortable with those.
Sounds great. Appreciate that.
Please continue.
Sure. So I'll just go through the decision page by page, and I'll do so very efficiently. On page 1, we just have the introduction, which makes reference to your approval of the amendment, presuming that that will be the vote hopefully tonight. Provides the background information stating that we applied for and obtained our site plan approval for this project back in 2017. Board members might remember that it was a unique circumstance. Litigation followed that. Not litigation on the approval, but litigation on an approval not required plan that we used to sever the property from some remaining property. We resolved the litigation with neighbors. We made a variety of concessions that required us to come back to your board. We came back to your board. You issued a second approval in 2020, and we're now here seeking these additional modifications. So that history is provided so that there are no questions for anybody that might be reading the decision in the future. On page 2, at the top of the page, you can see the first full paragraph begins by stating the applicant submitted a request for a site plan modification on April 18th. It goes on to describe the review by this board of that request, including a review with the assistance of your town engineer and a third-party consultant at Green International Affiliates. And then we begin with the actual findings. And we have a total, I guess, is there just one finding? There are 4 findings, but the first finding goes on for the better part of 2.5 pages. And really the first finding states the board finds the following is a list of the most significant changes to the site plans for the project since the issuance of the amended site plan approval. Arguably, and I thought of this as I was drafting it, I didn't need to include these 2.5 pages of the decision because we are incorporating by reference a plan that shows the changes. But I said, for somebody reading this in the future, they might want to understand what those changes are. So we have an itemized list of each of the changes that is taken more or less verbatim from the original submittal that we made. The 3 additional findings. Finding 2, the board finds that the modification is in keeping with the amended approval that it issued in 2020. Number 3, the board finds that the general and the special conditions that were included in that 2020 amended site plan approval are still current, except as may be amended below. And then number 4, and lastly, the board finds that the submittals made by the applicant in April of this year through GPR, as well as the peer review by GIA and by GPR, its responses are all incorporated as part of this decision. So that just incorporates those documents so it's clear what's being approved. Then we get to the supplemental conditions. So again, supplemental conditions 1 through 4 are the ones that I had proposed. 1 simply states that all general and special conditions that were in that amended site plan approval from 2020 are incorporated by reference, except as modified. Number 2 says that the notes and details that are stated or shown on the updated set of plans are also incorporated as conditions of this approval. You had made multiple requests that we include certain notes, so I thought it was important to state that those are conditions. Number 3, per the applicant's submittal through GPR, the following outstanding items shall be installed or updated. So these are the items that were outstanding as of last meeting. Some of these have actually even been addressed since then. But I think it makes some sense to just include them here to be sure that they're going to be completed as required conditions of approval.
Thank you. And I would just ask Lima and Nick to speak up. For those that are completed, just let us know, just so we, just for, if we come across them, that we know that they're done.
Sure.
So, and if you just want to quickly go through those bullet points.
Oh, sure. So number 1, right turn only, and no right turn signs to be installed at the driveway access. Nick, you can tell me if any of these have been done.
Those are done.
That's done.
Done. Okay.
And we work with Matt to get the one on the Washington Street.
Okay, good.
Number 2, 3 asphalt speed bumps to be installed in front of the tree box filters.
Outstanding.
Not yet.
Not yet, because you still have to do the expansion.
Yes, we're waiting for everything else.
Number 3, the width of the bituminous concrete pavement section of the driveway to be expanded.
Outstanding.
Number 4, turtle
You
nesting.
wouldn't have an estimate of time when that one, would you?
I'm meeting a contractor tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you. I'm sorry, Adam.
That's fine. Feel free to interrupt if you have questions. Number 4, turtle nesting area to be installed.
It's done?
Yes.
Number 5, 6-inch drainage cleanout inspection port to be installed over the underground 48-inch HDPE.
Outstanding as far as I know.
Turf reinforcement to be installed on the slope on the left-hand side of the driveway access.
Done.
Boulder slope reinforcement to be installed on the slope of the left-hand side of the driveway access.
Done.
And lastly, steep slope located on the left side of the driveway shall be regraded to a maximum of 2-to-1 slope while maintaining a 14-foot width gravel driveway.
Done.
So as you can see, five of these, what were there? 6, 7, 5 of the 8 have been completed. Special condition 4 says the applicant shall comply with the order of conditions issued by the Concom or any later order of conditions issued by the Concom. Again, the expectation is we have a further proceeding this Thursday before the Conservation Commission. I don't want to speak for the commission. I don't know if we'll wrap up, but the intention is that we'll wrap up, if not on Thursday, then at a subsequent meeting, and we'll have a revised order of conditions. Conditions 5 and 6 are the two that Mr. Ruiz had suggested. These are, I'm going to read them as modified. It's a bit difficult on the red line version to follow along, but the idea is these red line changes were made by Mr. Ruiz. My tweaks were meant really to make them consistent with the operation and maintenance plan language, which was submitted to you already. And so condition 5 says that the operation and maintenance log, which is the terminology used, required by the O&M plan shall be conducted for each best management practice as specified in the log. And then condition number 6 says, again referring to the operation and maintenance log, that the operation and maintenance log outlining inspections, repairs, replacement, and disposal for each BMP shall be maintained for each of the preceding 3 years. That's actually a requirement of the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, and shall be submitted annually to the Planning Board, to the DPW, and to the Conservation Commission. These logs shall be completed by a qualified professional with expertise in inspecting drainage system components. Again, that's per the language of the O&M plan. And then if there are any issues that must be addressed or actions that must be undertaken, they will be addressed or undertaken if and as required by the O&M plan. And then it says finally, this is to ensure, and this is Danny's language, this is to ensure that the stormwater system as shown in the plans is maintained and functioning properly.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Before I open up to my colleagues to ask you questions, did you have any further, any of your team have any further comments or reflections you want to say? Okay. I turn to Nathan and Jeff. Have any questions or comments?
I actually don't at this point, Mr. Chair.
I am also going to open to, I don't know if we have any visitors from the public here or concerned about this. Ms. Withy, would you like to come up, say your name and address, and ask your question?
No, I was just letting you know that there's.
You're here? No question? So what I'd like to do is then, if there's, if this seems brisk, you have to understand this comes after many meetings, site visits, and discussions. So
It's not brisk.
it has not been brisk. This is long awaited for. So what I'm looking for is a
The
motion,
pandemic was in there too.
It was.
The
That was
pandemic was
not
in
your
there,
fault.
too.
not your fault. So what I'm looking for is a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, oh, is there a question? I'm Heather, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. My goodness.
It's fine. Can I just ask one question?
Please
for
do.
My point? For condition number 6, is it just limited to 3 years, or can we make that longer? Given the uncertain weather patterns that we are having.
I don't know. I am without counsel, and I don't know if we can do that. Nick, you had a comment?
So the 3 years is mandated from the Wetland Protection Act. It's a rolling log as a minimum.
And it's in the stormwater handbook.
Right.
That's the standard
That's the
directly. I took
standard.
the language straight from the handbook.
But you could certainly keep those logs as long as you'd like, since they'd be forward to you.
Right. I mean, we're providing them to the town. So the
think-
stormwater handbook doesn't require that they be provided to the town. In fact, what the stormwater handbook says is they have to be made available upon request to DEP and to the Conservation Commission. We saw the language from Mr. Ruiz suggesting that we proactively provide copies
Yes.
to the Planning Board, the DPW, and the Conservation Commission. So under state record-keeping laws, you're required to keep those documents for 7 years.
Right.
My understanding is the inference that the logs will be kept only for 3 years and then stop, or they have to be kept for 3 years?
rolling.
So the logs will always be available. The O&M continues through the length of the project, is my understanding. You just have to keep,
3
year
years.
1
Yeah.
can be thrown away by you guys on year 4, but year 4 log gets done also.
it's always-
retention of
okay.
records, it's not do the work.
Thank you, Jeff.
And by the way, I've been through this with other projects. That's why I heard your question very clearly. It's like, yes, they will continue to do this.
Okay. That's all I wanna make
And the
sure.
nice part about this is, and having many of you had experience with our past superintendent, we have no way of getting it done or knowing it's done by private entities. So this request actually helps us a great deal.
Okay, good.
Keeps their feet to the fire.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. So what I'm looking for is a motion to approve the site plan modification per the July 11th, 2023 letter to our building commissioner, Charles Schultz, with the findings as articulated in the same July 11th letter.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no further discussion, I'm in favor. Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimous for aye. This letter is approved, and we'll take care of getting the decision out.
Appreciate it. I'll hand you your copy back.
Yes, please. And who's this?
I had my copy. It didn't get printed with the red line stuff. That's why I didn't recognize it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Good luck. And- Yep.
Visit one of our restaurants on the way out of town.
We always do.
I'm looking for a motion to open. Wait, this is.
Move to close. Well,
Yes, Ken, and I just want to say, before you craft it,
you can do
I don't believe we can open the public hearing for the Zone 2 Aquifer Overlay District at this meeting, because of the public notice did not include that.
So
We can discuss,
Let me close the Sayers Hold. Let's close.
let's close that, yep.
Okay. So move to close. There's continued public hearing for site plan modification from Meteors Power Group, Ayer Solar 2, 0 Washington Street, filed April 20, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
So, Mr. Chair, I hear what you're saying about the public hearing for the site plan.
Yes.
Okay. It is not specifically mentioned in the hearing notice that we were going to open that portion of it, or to have a discussion of that portion?
There was some confusion, and instead, the public notice said that there would be a special permit for the parking reduction, but that's actually a waiver request, not a special permit. The special permit is for the work in the Zone 2 Aquifer Overlay District. So there was some confusion in the language.
Okay. Let's open it and discuss, let's open the hearing, and why don't we use that as a copy?
Mr. Attorney Gibbons may have insight on this. If you just identify yourself and...
Tom Gibbons, and I represent DMG Investment LLC, which we'll all refer to tonight as DMG. So yeah, I don't think you should open the public hearing for the special permit on the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, and we're okay with that. I assume it'll get published. I don't know if the notice to the abutters contained the proper language or not.
I don't know.
I saw a box of things upstairs, but I don't know what was in, yeah.
So it'll be new notice to the abutters and publication for that special permit.
So I think what you're asking, Mr. Chair, to modify this public hearing for site plan and stormwater for DMG Investments 201, 205 West Main.
Yes, sir.
Filed June 9th, 2023. Move to open.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, no.
Technically, under your rules, you gotta find that the application is complete before you open the public hearing.
Yeah.
And I think we are complete, but that's in your rules.
So I think we need a motion to find that the application is complete. Complete just means that all the pieces are there. It's obviously not approval. It's just that we got all the necessary pieces. And according to the report from the town planner, that is the case. So I need a motion to, that says that we find that the application for DMG Investments 201, 205 West Main Street is complete.
I will say.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Sorry, I should have mentioned something. The fact of the matter is that in the application, your application is correct. The application does name the fact that you need the special permit in the Aquifer Protection District. So your documents are correct in the
Yes.
application. It was somehow transcribed within Town Hall in the advertisement. Now, did you guys see the advertisement?
I have seen it
Okay.
since I've looked at it.
Nobody picked up the fact that the aquifer wasn't there?
No,
Okay.
I don't know that I saw it.
But the application is complete because it does contain that particular piece, the aquifer
Correct.
protection.
I believe I had a motion and a second.
Yeah.
And a vote.
And we voted.
We did vote.
We talked afterwards, so we can
Yeah,
revote.
kind of goofed out.
No, we're good.
Either way.
So did we vote to open the public hearing yet, though? We did the vote on the finding, right? Okay, I need the motion to open the public hearing for the site plan and stormwater review for 201, 205 West Main Street, DMG Investments.
Move to open the public hearing for the site plan and stormwater review, DMG Investments, 201, 205 West Main Street, filed June 9th, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I think we should read the ad. You've got the ad, Jeff?
I do not have a copy of that with me that I'm aware of.
Just to put it in the record. There it is.
Go ahead, John.
The public notice reads as follows. Town of Air Planning Board Public Hearing Notice. The Air Planning Board will be conducting a public hearing at 6:15 PM on Tuesday, July 11th, 2023, in the first floor meeting room at Air Town Hall 1 Main Street to consider the site plan, special permit, and stormwater application submitted by DMG Investments LLC for property located at 201 through 205 West Main Street, Air, Massachusetts. The applicant is proposing a mixed-use development consisting of ground floor retail space and 3 upper stories consisting of 100, more or less 170 residential units. The project is to include upgrades to lighting, landscaping, utilities, and stormwater management. This is the portion of the piece that we've been discussing. The applicant is requesting approval of special permit for reduction in parking per air zoning bylaw section 9.1.10, in which the parking requirement will be reduced from 289 spaces to 172 spaces, section 9.1.2, and the percentage of small car parking space will be increased from 10% to 12%, section 9.1.5. The applicant is also seeking a stormwater permit for a major project under the stormwater bylaw in coordination with the site plan review.
Thanks.
All in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Hearing is open. While Heather is being so kind as to get the materials up on the screen so the applicant can walk us through the application, I want to talk about how things are going to proceed today. This is an enormous project. It's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. And we are anticipating, we're going to have a few meetings to get through this. The purpose of tonight's meeting is this. It's an opportunity, one, for the applicant to present their vision, go through the application, talk about the stormwater, we could talk about parking. We're not going to talk about the Aquifer Overlay District. And present their vision. And then secondly, it's also an opportunity for the applicant to get further feedback from the town departments that had submitted comments on the application. We received quite a bit of feedback from these departments, and as you can see in the room, there's quite a few representatives of the town here. So this is a chance for the applicant to ask for further feedback or for clarification or anything related to those comments. This is the time to do it. Thirdly, what I'd hope to do this evening is to get approvals for the town planner to send out an RFP to a third-party professional engineer to review, one, the overall site plan application, and then two, the traffic and parking studies. So we're looking for approval for RFPs for third-party reviews of those things. There's also the issue of water and sewer. However, we're not going to go for discuss that this evening because we're waiting for feedback from the director of DPW, who's currently on vacation, so we can push that to the next meeting. So that said, I'd like to give the applicant. Yes, Nathan?
Could you just make a distinction about preliminary? Are we going to go through a preliminary application?
No.
No.
No preliminary.
Okay, one application.
This is one application, right?
Yeah, there's one final piece where there may be comments from the board as well.
And there may indeed be comments from the board and et cetera, but at least those things this evening. So to get started, who from the representing the applicant is going to present this?
So I'll start and we'll introduce everybody on the team. But as I said, my name's Tom Gibbons, representing DMG Investment LLCs, which we'll refer to as DMG. We're before you tonight, as you know, for site plan approval for DMG's proposed mixed-use development consisting of commercial space on the first floor and 170 residential units on floors 2 through 4 at 201 to 205 West Main Street, and the application for stormwater management permit pursuant to the Town of Air Bylaw, Chapter 245. So I have a large development team with me tonight, and I think the best way to do it is have everybody introduce themselves, and we'll start with Ian Hamill from DMG and then go down the line.
My name is Kean Hamill. I'm head of development for DMG, and DMG is the applicant tonight. We've been working on this project for about 18 months or so, and we're very excited to formally present it this evening.
Thank you.
I'm Isaac Smith. I'm an architect and senior associate with Bergmeyer. We are the architects for the project.
I'm Daryl Filippi. I'm the principal with Bergmeyer in charge of this project.
Thank you.
Drew Garvin, engineer with Bowler, representing the engineering on this project.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Lori Busker. I'm a landscape architect with Michael D'Angelo Landscape Architecture.
Thank you.
And Eric Fredette, I'm a senior project manager with Van Bowman, the traffic engineers on the project.
Thank you and welcome.
So before we have Drew Garvin take you through the site plan, I just wanted to remind the board that we had previously been before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we obtained 2 variances from the ZBA. One was for a lot width variance, and the other was for a height variance to allow for the 4 floors in that district. I do have copies of the recordings for the file. And so we're also hoping, as part of this presentation, to discuss a little bit more about the peer review before the end of the night, and if there was going to be a site plan, a site visit, that we think that the Conservation Commission will be having a site visit, and maybe we can coordinate one visit if the board is inclined to have one.
If we could defer the discussion of the site plan visit to when we have a town planner at our side, so that the next meeting, that would be helpful to us.
For scheduling the site visit?
Yes, because I don't know what Danny's, I don't know what his schedule is, et cetera. So is that too far?
When do we envision that we'll be back before you again? We're gonna need
2 weeks from today.
So the notices will go out tomorrow, will they, for the abutters? And
No, I guess, okay, we can you think we can get to a site plan?
I think by the time, just speculating, by the time we get through the comments from the different town boards and
Interested parties.
ourselves and other interested parties, you'll have a lot to respond to. And I'm estimating you won't get back till a month from now instead of 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
All right, well, with that, we'll have Drew begin taking you through the plan.
Good evening, Drew Garvin from Bowler. I think the best way to show you the plans is our layout plan. Oops. Where'd it go?
This is the hardest part. Someone else's computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let me just start here before I go to site layout plan. The existing parcel is made up of 2 parcels, 201 to 205 West Main Street. There is an existing business here and some paving and gravel area, working space here on the front half of the site. MBTA Railroad runs across the rear of the site, and there is an existing wetlands area in that northeast rear corner of the site with associated buffer zones, as well as floodplain line that has an elevation attached to it. I believe it's 217.1, and we have that contour not shown here, but that has been surveyed and designated on the plan. The proposed improvements to the site include this building, which is shaded a little darker, kind of wraps around in a U shape. There is the existing parking is proposed on the ground floor level with an entrance here from Main Street. And then there are 3 stories above containing the residential units, 170 units proposed, with retail facing the street, about 6,100 square feet of retail area in the front, first floor only. We have been in touch with the fire department early in the project and coordinated emergency access to the site There's a couple of ways to get there. One is the main entrance, which is going to be fully accessible with fire trucks and emergency vehicles to make all these turns and access the building in case of an emergency. If the building itself is on fire or can't be accessed, there is a side emergency access road that will be pavers that will come around so that you can access all the areas without having to go underneath the building itself. And that also has been proven with truck turning and coordinated with the latest fire vehicles and coordinated with the fire department. The building will service all the utilities from the front. West Main Street's getting improved. It's under construction now, as well as the utilities, water, sewer, gas, electric. A new transformer is proposed and will be coordinated through the electric company. And all these improvements, if you notice, as you go to the back, we do touch on the 100-foot buffer zone and the floodplain. We have filed with conservation. We're meeting them for our first hearing on Thursday. The encroachments are not large. The floodplain in particular, when you encroach on there and take storage, you have to provide compensatory storage, which it's not shown in this plan, but I can switch to it in the future. But there's some regrading here to regain that flood storage that would be taken by this area in particular being filled in. So that's all been accounted for in the drainage report. I think that's the main improvements to the site. I think you explained the parking reduction we're seeking as far as the reduction of parking and the compact cars. That's all shown here. The compact spaces are sort of clustered in this area. We thought it made sense for this type of project. Other than that, that's the main improvements. Again, we are showing the DPW's improvements along the street, which includes parking, extended sidewalk. We have set the building back to kind of create even a deeper sidewalk for some potential kind of cafe settings and retail aesthetics. So all that has tried to be coordinated with those improvements and to make the site to fit the Ayer's master plan.
What's the date of that, Drew, of that drawing right there?
I think it was, we submitted this in early June.
So there's no change from what was put in?
Correct. What was submitted, there's no change. That's correct.
Because it looks different along the sidewalk from where I am. I'm showing like trees along the sidewalk or something.
You might be just looking at a different...
On 301.
Oh, are you? Huh.
June 7.
Yeah. Okay. We'll figure it out.
I should say a couple other items. The trash for the facility is located in the back. We anticipate this being wheeled out front and dealt with. There will be snow storage. There's only a few snow storage areas in the rear here and really in this area. It's to accommodate this open parking. There will be a snow and general property maintenance plan in place to deal with snow, to deal with landscaping, to deal with general property maintenance. As part of our O&M plan, we wrote in that for severe storms, the snow will be removed off-site. Yeah, and those were some of the comments that were incorporated. We didn't call out this, we didn't write the snow storage areas on the plan, but that's how we anticipate to deal with those areas, just to use the small areas for the smaller storm and to cart them off-site for the larger storms as part of a maintenance agreement with the company.
So you're basically saying that area you just pointed out, there's no landscaping or anything in there for snow, where you're going to put the snow storage? I thought there was
There is some landscaping here, but there's a small area here, and there's a small area back in here that would accommodate some snow storage.
And then you anticipate carting out snow?
You have to take it out.
You're gonna take it out if it gets to that level.
Truck it out.
In the industry, we call it hauling, and it's very lucrative. Which makes me wonder how you're going to get machines back in there. What's the height of the entranceway over the garage?
15 feet.
15
If you
feet?
go in, it's 15 feet high.
I actually came downtown today and read through the plans I could read.
Is these ones, the big
Yeah.
ones?
So just as you can see, a majority of the parking lot, or it's like almost half or more, is covered. So
By the
it's a little
building.
deceiving when you look at the parking lines, but a lot of it is covered by the building.
We are capturing all the roof drainage and runoff along the parking in a chamber system in this area that exceeds storage for up to the 100-year storm and meets all DEP stormwater management requirements. Typical catch basin to manhole system into a multiple chamber system underground to recharge the water.
And you've got your overflow running out the directions, I believe?
Yes.
If I remember correctly?
Yes. Let me see if I can.
It's 402.
To that.
There you go, there's one of them.
Yeah. There's an overflow that comes out here. And here you can see the grading for the flood. This is really about flood compensation here. Just a little regrading. When you do the flood compensation, it has to be foot by foot. So it's sort of an intricate engineering exercise, but that's been accommodated for there.
If I may ask, on the top of it, I'm going to call it's not Caltech, you use Smart.
I think they're storm tech chambers.
Storm Tech Chamber,
Yeah.
exactly. The heavy dark line that goes, what would be, what is that? Is that also?
Those are just pipes, so catch basin,
Okay,
manhole
that's inflow.
Yeah.
That's inflow to Storm Tech,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Again, I didn't spend a lot of time with the big set of plans.
And that's it for my presentation. If you have further questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can, if appropriate, I can pass it on to Daryl and the architectural part of the presentation, unless you have questions.
I would say, I'm sure there are questions, so I'd say I want to give you guys a chance to do your full presentation, and then I'm sure we'll be asking you to come back up for questions. Is that acceptable to the rest of you?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, good. Yes, thank you.
Want to turn the building rendering?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, gentlemen. Daryl Flippy, Bergmeyer.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So just a couple of points to build upon what Drew was saying in relation to site planning. We start with the building positioning. We did set the building back an additional 5 feet from the setback to widen that sidewalk to really encourage a lot of community and pedestrian activity along the streetscape. We also are showing, some landscape vegetation along the street to help soften the hardscape a bit. I want to just go back, maybe just I think there's been a couple questions on where trash is happening. So in that back of the building, there is a service core. So right in the very right corner where you pass through the entrance is the trash room. So we have a compactor in there. All the trash is contained in that room. So they'll be on dumpsters and they wheel out to the vendor that picks up the trash. So everything's contained. It's not anywhere located on the site whatsoever.
So that's that northeast corner of as I look at the drawing like this?
Correct.
It's about a 20
So
by
right next to
20
the
room,
access
something like
drive.
that?
Yeah.
I hear you say compactor, which means you're going to have trash chutes.
We have a trash chute.
Got it,
That is
okay.
correct.
One chute per floor?
Well, it's continuous chute in one corner of the building.
Exactly, so it's,
Correct.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
So
all
you're
technical stuff to
anticipating
get
that
us.
Managed.
this is going to be like a 30-yard compactor or a 50-yard?
We have to talk to the vendor exactly the sizing of that. But the room is large enough to handle a compactor and I think I have 4 dumpsters to
For
rotate it.
recycling or whatever?
Correct.
Separating?
Correct. So based on that, the architecture that you see here, we were sensitive to some of the zoning requirements about trying to mass it in a way that it doesn't look like a large block of a building. So we were articulating it in different materials and different finishes. We are bringing in brick to the building facade to pay respect to Main Street itself, which is, highly, high masonry consistency on the context for the Main Street. So we're trying to bring some of that in, but also trying to, like I said, break up the mass so it doesn't have a large presence. We know that Ayer has a great history with the railroad, so we are introducing, our articulations through like the bridge that you see and the canopy, and we'll make those to kind of reflect some of the steel that kind of reflects like the railroad. So we are trying to pay respect to some of your history and draw some relief to the facade itself. I think that pretty much covers the architecture itself for now. If you have any questions you want me to expand upon, I mean, I think actually one thing I will say, there was a question in response about one access point through the parking area, which we were very sensitive about because we think that is a benefit to having one access point to the parking area. It limits the potential for pedestrian and vehicular conflicts. If we had two accesses, it's a real moving component to that. It allows us to maximize the commercial space on the ground floor to really produce an active environment that we're really trying to create a community environment. And again, while it's limiting the pedestrian vehicular conflicts, it's also controlling the vehicular movement onto the West Main Street. So it is, I think, the question was clearance. There's a 15-foot clearance, so it's tall enough to get the fire trucks through, and actually the grade drops in that tunnel another additional 3 feet. So any movement beyond the parking area itself, we have additional clearance. Any large trucks or anything like that. So
it's a downslope driveway that goes in from the street.
That's correct. The site tapers back towards the wetland.
Okay. May I, Mr. Chair, ask a quick
Please
question?
do.
My eye was drawn, first time I looked at this, my eye was drawn to the left-hand roof, if you will, on the lower structure. That green, is that going to be outdoor space for the building, or is that just the roof of the building?
It is outdoor space for the building, yes.
Okay.
So mostly the entrance to the residential lobby is mostly on that left side.
Okay.
So the residential lobby and amenity spaces are on that ground floor wing, and we'll have access to that courtyard.
So it's like a one-story
Correct.
courtyard.
Correct.
Okay. An outdoor space for people to congregate.
Up one floor up.
That's, I believe that.
That's a great way to show green.
The light green that's
Yes.
next to the yellow.
Oh,
So you don't want to own the unit right there.
Is that the roof of the first floor?
That is correct. Yeah. Well, whether it be a combination, we're still developing it, right? Whether it's a combination of pavers and probably most likely a turf grass or
That's represented by this.
correct.
Piece of-
That's amenity spaces. There's fitness programs, work from home spaces, support programs for the residents.
Okay, great.
Just
Nate,
quick
please.
questions. What is the actual setback?
The actual setback's 15. Is it 15?
15.
And it requires the setback is 10 feet
Minimum.
required. Yeah.
Minimum of 30. And what is the facade length?
264 feet.
What is it?
Going out from memory.
You can get back on the actual, but
Yeah.
just want to know that. The facade length.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to the building, yeah.
I think it's in
I knew
the
that for the ZBA.
It's actually
Board
written
of
on the
Appeals
plans.
thing.
Yeah.
It's in the permit that they got for the Board of Appeals, or the variance, I should say.
Can I approach the table to add a couple of comments?
Please do.
My name's Kian Hamill. I'm with the applicant DMG. Just to build on what Darrell said, he and the design team were very thoughtful about the Main Street aesthetic, which is why you'll see that the building is broken up into different segments with different materialities. So the thought there was to make it look as though it's a series of different buildings as opposed to one monolithic structure, to try and break that up from the pedestrian view on the street. I think they did a really nice job of that, and also with the added canopies to create shading. It creates a very nice environment for any outdoor setup, whether it's cafes or for retail vendors to display goods. And then with the additional setback, really, we're trying to create a plaza where, as Darrell mentioned, there's a sense of community and where people want to spend time as opposed to just, fly by and without stopping. So I think that was that's something that we wanted to point out.
Thank you.
Keane, are we supposed to see this line on the left? It looks like it's forward. Looks like it might be forward of the rest, but it's not, right? It's just my eye. These are all basically in the same 15-foot spot. It's not going
The 15
out.
feet is right to the masonry, and then it's the storefront sets back another couple of feet.
Okay, but it's not.
So it creates more depth to it.
So Ken, where you just pointed, that shadowy area,
Yeah.
that's a covered plaza right in the center.
Right.
So right
Those
there.
columns then are
Yeah.
further forward. Is that what you're saying?
So the sidewalk actually goes further back into that covered plaza. So there's a nice little square area where people can sit and spend time in the shade.
So the 15 feet is to the masonry facade.
Okay, so.
Right, so you got an additional.
base of the column.
Correct.
Right.
I'm just going to switch it on you for a second.
See, it looks
So
like it's
that's
straight.
that's one line.
It's one
But this is
line.
a covered entrance.
We got
So that's
that.
one line. It doesn't vary. That's what your question is, right?
Yeah.
That's one line.
To your eye, it looks like it might
Yeah, it's because of
vary.
the shadows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't
It's
vary.
jumping in and out. I see what you're
That
saying.
was my
Where you see
question.
that storefront glass, it's close to 17 feet.
Correct.
Correct.
But you're right. The building facade is straight.
Then the second level over those, the actual apartment level, that's all pretty much uniform as well, just different materials.
Correct. You'll see where the masonry is in relation to the party panel on, say,
Yeah,
the
I see
white.
it, yeah.
There is a slight plane change there because of the thickness of materials. So there is some
Okay, yeah.
relief visually.
There is some relief.
Yeah, visually too, along that whole facade.
And again, that's just to break it up and create variation.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, it's not going to read it's not a flat facade.
Okay, I just had one more comment. So just, we were speaking about some of the items that came up in the comments, such as snow management, trash management, traffic at the point of entry, and we have our traffic consultant here with us this evening who can speak to that further. One other item that came up, which is, it's an item that we should discuss, is the parking counts. So we do have a proposed parking management plan, which is consistent with the parking management plan that we implement on most of our assets. And that is that the leases exclude parking, and anybody that wants to rent a parking space will pay an additional fee that usually varies between $15 to $45, depending on what the market rate will be. That's per month. We are also going to be adding an additional condition to that where any apartment can only rent up to one parking space per unit. So if there is a household that has more than one car, they may not want to live here and they may choose to live somewhere else, which we're okay with because we do feel that there is sufficient demand in the area, particularly from neighboring Devons, that we don't foresee that being an issue for our rental absorption. But again, the leases will exclude parking completely, and then there is the option to rent up to one space.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Please, sir.
We're going to get around to inclusionary at some point when we start looking at the rest of the project. I would hope that there would be a sliding scale if we get affordable housing in there, that there will be don't change the numbers of parking spaces, but recognize that an affordable unit would also hopefully benefit from a parking rate that is in line with it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah. And we can work with Alicia on that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've said it, but we are planning 21 affordable units in this project.
And we don't know, they're 1, 2, 3 beds, 1 bed,
It's a
2
mix.
beds.
It's 3 studios, 18 one beds, and 4.
Oh no, but it's the whole project.
It's studios, one
Oh no,
bedroom,
for
2 bedrooms.
affordable units. Yeah,
Correct.
I
It's a
understand
mix.
that. But of 170 units, what's your breakdown going to be?
It's 3 studios for
No,
25.
170 units.
25 is affordable.
I understand that.
Unit
100
mix
and-
overall.
Quick math. 145 other units are going to be 1s, 2s, and 3s, right?
No 3 bedrooms.
There's
No
three
3s.
bedrooms.
Okay.
Studio ones and
Studios, ones,
Studios
and
1s
twos.
and 2s. Okay. So some mix of studios, ones and twos, equal to 145 units, with 25 units on the affordable side.
Correct.
Thank you.
And even in the two-bedroom units, there's one space would be what they could rent. Parking space.
And to your point, we can talk about we can discuss
some sort of
the rate
scale
for
yeah,
that. Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
No, and there's a lot of work to be done along those lines. I understand that, but just
You want to hear what it says in the plan for the makeup of the spaces, of the apartments?
yes, I probably didn't read that.
21 studios, 125 one-bedrooms,
Okay.
24 plus or minus two bedrooms.
Okay.
That's the way it's shown here. So amongst that group, you would include the affordable. So of the 21 studios, there'd be, what'd you say, three affordable?
Three studios,
Three studio affordable.
18 one-bedrooms and 4 two-bedrooms.
Does it have a square footage? Okay.
I'm going to get to that
Okay.
when I ask my questions.
So I think certainly questions now, and since we do have the whole team here, if there's traffic questions, it would be great if we can deal with those tonight. And
Yes, what I'd like to do is that since we have a number of people representing the departments here who've submitted their comments, I'd like them, if they don't mind, to step up and talk about their comments, and then that way you, the applicant, can ask for further clarification. Matt, would you mind starting us off with DPW's comments? Would that be acceptable?
Absolutely. Let me step back.
So for the record, I'm Matt Hernan, town engineer. Looked at this plan, this application with the DPW director. We have quite a few comments, really for every facet of the application, not just parking, not just water, drainage, it's really everything. We're just talking about the parking, so I can start there. So 172 parking spaces are proposed, so one spot per unit, if I have that right.
Not quite.
Thereabouts, slightly higher than that.
So my question is, employees of the building, visitors of the building, where do they park? We don't have a municipal parking lot. We have on-street parking that was recently created, 32 spots. It's not, those spots aren't solely for one development, it's for the general public. So I just wondering where.
So the parking will be offered up to one space per unit. We don't anticipate that every unit will want parking, particularly the studios, but it will be on a first come, first served basis. So there will be certain spaces reserved for retail use and for staff use. And from there, it'll be first come, first served.
Do you know how many spaces there'd be for non-residents?
So in terms of staff, I believe there's going to be 4 part-time and full-time staff. So we'll set aside 4 spaces, or if it's, say there's a night shift and a day shift, they can share a space. For retail, we are doing various studies on different uses. For example, a retail store will have a much wider use than, say, a cafe would. So what we'll do as we progress through the development and as we start leasing the retail spaces, we'll have a better sense of what those parking requirements are. And say, for example, we rent one of the spaces to a grab-and-go bakery. If that bakery decides after 3 years that they need to shut up shop and move on, then we can take those allocated parking spaces and reassess based on the next retail use. So it's going to be an ongoing management plan. What we do, say, today may not be what we're doing in 5 years from now as the parking demands change.
Understood. It just seems like there's very little flexibility if any changes with what's proposed. I understand the size constraints and really what you're up against. So that's my biggest worry, is just such little room for curve. There's very little room for overflow. We don't have a municipal parking lot if there is overflow. There's no municipal parking lot anywhere near.
So, I think it might be important to talk about how, what you believe the parking usage is going to be. If you're thinking about 70% of that's right. Sure. So, because parking obviously is a big issue, everybody's commented on it. The DMG is confident that they're not going to need that many spaces under any condition. Now, and you might say, well, that's all well and good, but what happens if people stop parking on the street? So there is going to be an enforcement plan. There is going to be only an option of one space per unit. And so the risk is on DMG, right? If someone comes in and they're renting a two-bedroom and it's spouses and they both want cars, well, then this isn't the place for them. So DMG's taking that risk, but they're also confident, because this is a very expensive project. They're confident in their studies, what the studies that they rely on, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that, why we think that there won't be a need for that much parking.
Sure, so the parking patterns that we see in our properties is that peak parking demand is at night, it's not during the day, because the nature of people using their cars is that, if they're driving to work, that space becomes vacated during the day. So there is the opportunity for retail to use the vacant spaces during daytime hours, or if there's a vacant space, it's first come, first served. We will also be implementing a parking permit situation. So if you do rent a space, you will be issued a parking permit, which must be displayed on your dashboard if you're parked in the space. So if we start seeing that there's a lot of cars without parking permits, and they are not, if they're there for more than an hour and it's not associated with retail, we will tow and ticket those cars. So it's something that will be met.
And that's the hard part from my perspective. Yeah, it just, from my perspective, it just, it puts the pressure on the town. If, say that isn't managed properly, maybe it is, but if it isn't, we're left with a challenge dealing with creative parking measures. That puts a strain on DPW police.
I think we should give a separate meeting just on the parking.
Yeah, I think what we want to do here is just surface some of it, but we're definitely going to go deeper into the parking, and I definitely, myself personally, have some reservations. I'm a little confused by your comments about the flexibility of the spaces. I mean, once someone pays to say, I want a space, and they pay the extra, would that space be marked for them, or it's just open and you have to have the permit?
Correct.
I can just anticipate conflict between the retail users and residents, and I'm trying to imagine how that would work, especially if the retail customers don't find parking in the street. They're going to understand to go in that entrance and poke around and look for a spot.
There will be signage directing people to parking.
It merits thought and discussion.
And I think the key is the expected utilization. Right? And we can delve into that further, but I think we're all under the assumption that there's going to be 170 cars there for one per resident. And the studies that DMG is relying on says that wouldn't be the case. And then I think the other important thing to think about is that, if you build enough parking for everybody, they're going to have it, right? I mean, if you can have two cars there and there's no big deal, you have two cars. If you can't, and this is the place you choose to live, then there won't be as many cars. Now, other things to think about too is the fact that Mott has the bus on demand. There's a new little shelter not too far down the street from here, so the expectation is that a lot of these will be younger tenants that don't have cars, that don't have the same desire to have a car. There's going to be a bike room. I don't think we're talking about the bike room, but there's going to be a big spot for the bikes. You got the bus. You got some walkability here. I know that up on Devon's, there's a whole lot of development going on. There's one of the new, I think the new Fusion place, they're talking about 600 engineers, I read an article about. So, a lot of these younger people aren't likely to have cars or as many cars as we expect. But maybe covering just a little bit about the bike room and the number of bikes we can store in there.
I do want to make a comment. I'm sorry, so before you talk, you have to remember where we are in Ayer, Massachusetts, as opposed to, say, Cambridge or Boston. We don't have a subway system. We don't have an elaborate bus system. The public transit options are very limited here. And I kind of got the feeling, reading with your modeling this on the expectation of an urban tenant who wouldn't expect to have a car because, as what I did when I lived in Somerville, I didn't need a car. Why? Because I was right on the red line. However, if my expectation is I'm moving out to Ayer, and I got other things to do besides going to work, And I'm aware that there is no subway system, no elaborate bus system, but the MART mini vans or mini buses. I think that I think it's reasonable to say that there's a different set of expectations for transportation. And I am concerned about the model tenant you have in mind and the reality of someone who moves out to, well, a relatively remote place, such as Ayer. That's a concern.
Absolutely. I think you were shown some of the parking reports done by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And those are parking levels where they're recommending at about 60 to 70%, not a one-to-one. So we're actually providing 30% more parking than what the guidelines developed for a few miles up on the same line are. So it is being taken into account, but the reality is that when you're dealing with a large building where you see 50 units or more in a single building, the parking utilization rates plummet. This is not like people who are choosing to live in, say, a 10 or 5 unit building. It's a radically different environment. And so they make different choices about it. They're smaller units. These aren't large households. We're talking about 1 to 2 person households that would be occupying this, and it totally changes the parking demand.
In the interest of continuing the I'm sorry.
I didn't know we were going to get into the parking so much tonight. I was almost going to recommend we had a separate meeting. But I'll make a couple of just quick comments on your mathematics and whatnot. So you're talking about 172 parking spaces. Among those parking spaces, I think we have at least 6 that are ADA compliant. It means those probably won't be used. Maybe they may never get used. They could get used once in a while unless we have tenants that need those particular spaces. So I'm going to take 6 spaces off the 172 for that. According to our zoning, I believe the retail requires about 19 spaces based on the mathematics for the retail requirement. And then you have a 5% requirement for visitors parking, which you used when you deducted the math, but you didn't count it in the 172 that are left. So if you take away 8 spaces for the visitors, 19 spaces for the retail, and 6 spaces for the handicap, or the accessible, I'll use the wrong term. Let's say come out to 40, something like that, roughly 27 and 8 and 6, something like that. So you're really talking about the apartments having 172 less 35 or 40. So you can't assign those ADA spaces, I don't think, in an apartment or lease them out. You have to leave those open. So you can't assign the ones that should be set aside for retail. You have to leave them open. So I don't believe the numbers that you're using add up to the 172 that you're talking about. It might be more in the vicinity of 150 or even less that are really available for the tenants. Maybe that gets to the 70% that you're talking about, when you use the, inside 128 calculations and whatnot, but.
You will be able to add some of the street parking, which aren't incorporated in our plan, but there are many street spaces available too.
Yeah, that's potentially available for retail, but it's not going to be available for a tenant to park overnight.
But that's what we're talking about, the whole package.
So you understand where I'm coming, that there's a deduction that I don't think you've made evident to us for these other spaces.
So I think the way that's being handled, and this is really important, is that this is a mixed-use development. And so as soon as we start using the mixed-use development, we factor in non-concurrent use patterns and things like that. That is why we shift away from saying it's this block of parking for this use and it's this block of parking for that use. That's under the other provision of the code. And the whole reason for the mixed-use provision to be there is because there is a recognition that when you combine uses, that parking demand and the dynamics there are very different from a single-use facility that would require parking based on a count of occupants for a given use. So it's a different world, and that's why there are provisions in the code to allow for a different way to calculate.
I'm just cautioning you that using 170 apartments for 172 spaces is probably not the way we're looking at it. So that's the way. I didn't really want to get into too much tonight, but that's my quick thought on that.
Go ahead, Nathan. I just want to see if Matt has any more comments about the infrastructure.
Absolutely. So I was going to suggest Let's let Matt go
Turn
to
the
the
page.
DPW, because we have representatives from other departments, including fire, including police, and they're gonna touch on their concerns of parking and access as well. So we'll have ample opportunity to revisit issues. Go ahead.
I don't want to eat up too much time or go into too much detail on any
As much
subjects.
time as you need.
Get on the table.
Matt, you have much time as you need.
So the next subject for utilities, the water, sewer, drainage. So our water infrastructure was upgraded very recently, last year on West Main Street. So we have pretty high confidence that our water infrastructure can actually service this building.
You do have confidence.
I do have confidence, but you can't have full confidence unless you actually get the hard numbers, which typically for a building of this size, that warrants fire flow tests, because they have to design the sprinkler system. So based on that,
Preliminarily, you think it's going to fit?
Yeah, it's going to work.
well, it was designed in mind for development like this. So we do have confidence.
But also fire flow and stuff like that's going to be supplemented, and if they have to design a solution, they have to design a solution. As long as we can provide the water to it, they have to get it to the upper floors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that should be expected, that we're going to go through the flow
Yeah.
test, do the whole engineering, and work with you with those analysis so we all understand that we're meeting all the requirements. So that's definitely on our next steps to do once we get through the approvals.
So another comment is just in regards to water usage. So a building of this scale, we don't have endless supply of water. So we need to have an understanding of what the typical water usage day to day could be expected for a building of this scale, just so we can understand what type of impact that would have, which is a fairly straightforward calculation, but we do need that in writing.
And Matt, would it be unreasonable for us to expect that, part of what a third-party engineering review do would be look at those water and sewer numbers and calculations, or?
Paul has somebody that can do that, I would guess, right?
Yeah, we can certainly we'll file the Title V flow calculation, which we can provide. But as Darrell was saying, as part of the building permitting process, all these things, water flow tests, all these capacities, I thought are dealt with procedurally, as a matter of procedure. So we fully anticipate to do everything that's required to meet all those regulations. But that being said, I'm writing down a note to provide. I can certainly provide the water and sewer estimated flows based on the occupancy.
So just, I guess, for clarity, so with the peer review, you're not expecting that we have the calculations ready for site plan approval, but that's part of the process that comes after.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, so that would be necessarily a requirement before we can get site plan approval.
Okay, do you have other comments, Matt?
6 pages. Yeah, well, try to keep it brief. The stormwater, generally, keep it simple, it's generally a good design that really we believe will work. There's some details that, we have a few questions on, but I think it's all stuff that we can sort out through the site plan review process. I don't think there's any major comments at this time. I did make note that we haven't looked at it in such great detail, like with town stormwater regulations. The drainage report was done really the proper format that we're used to seeing, so we don't have any major comments at this time with drainage, but we will have some more detailed comments as the process moves along.
Okay, great.
The sewer system, this is probably the biggest comment in regards to utilities. So the sewer system was not upgraded during the West Main Street reconstruction project. It is original to West Main Street. It's 1960s infrastructure, and it wasn't designed to support large commercial industrial usage. It's pretty much a wastewater system that has minimal capacity. DPW didn't perform a full engineered study on this, but just from our professional experience, we need a lot more information. We actually need so much more. We probably need a model of a certain area, basically to see what the wastewater level would look like on a day-to-day basis in that system. Basically to show that this building could be, that our sewer system can adequately service this building on top of the other commercial, residential, industrial buildings in the area. So we feel that a study's warranted for the town's infrastructure, and not necessarily the whole system, but a certain area that, a few streets that don't have high confidence and that may require off-site improvements.
Through you, have the applicant received your comments? You guys received the department comments?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so, yeah, you know.
So, you know what, so now, when you're ready to conclude, all I would ask at your conclusion, just give us your top 2 or 3, your top concerns for them, so the applicant is there's no ambiguity about your major concerns.
Sure.
Can I just ask a question on, so in the SOAR comment, you said wastewater treatment capacity is available. So the distinction between the capacity to treat it, but getting it there.
Exactly. That's how I read it, yeah.
And it's not necessarily the whole system, but a certain stretch that is just not designed, it was not designed for large developments, so. And we can provide a lot of information for study. We have good records, we have a good idea of what, we don't want to make this a full-blown town-wide study, so.
Okay.
And really, the traffic and the sewer were my 2 biggest.
The 2 biggest, the traffic and sewer?
Absolutely.
Right.
And several comments, but for the sake of time, I don't know if you'd like me to go over anything else.
Yeah,
We're good. We got
Traffic Mr. Chairman, so the top issue was traffic. Is it parking or traffic?
Parking.
Okay, because I know there was some comments on traffic, and we do have the traffic engineer here that if there were particular concerns there that we would touch upon.
Yeah, a few minor ones, really just namely the traffic study was performed during the reconstruction project. So we feel that a new traffic count is warranted. It just doesn't reflect what's out there today. Not the project. The project is actually substantially complete, just for your information.
Yeah, I mean, I can address that very quickly, knowing that we have lots of people to talk. So we did do the count during the construction, trying to balance time between filing and making sure school was in session. And so we did the count, and we actually had 2 other historic count stations that MassDOT has. One was just east and just west, and we can provide this to all so that you can review it. But based on the projected ADT that they had at each of those locations, our counts actually came in higher, so we felt reasonably comfortable using the volumes that we collected. We also, kind of looked at the area, and while some people may have kept away because of the construction, there's no real good diversion route. There's not like a really great way to get around this, so we felt like the majority of people traveling through this that would have on a typical day are still doing so. So that's why we felt relatively comfortable. We also did a quick sensitivity analysis to say the roadway volumes were 35 or even 50% higher, and the site driveway still operates okay. So we can package all that up for your review, just to help give you that level of comfort with the operations with those volumes that we collected.
Just to summarize, just so I know that I understand. So you base your study on 2 sets of historical data that was available to you, plus counts?
We based it on our counts because our counts came in higher than what the historical counts were showing. And so we felt relatively comfortable. And then again, we looked, after hearing that there was concern about it, we looked to say, well, what if the volumes were higher? And I think during the weekday morning peak hour, they could be up to 50% higher. And the weekday afternoon peak hour, they could be up to 35% higher. And the driveway would still operate at level of service D, which for a built-up area like this is what we would consider acceptable. And if we were willing to go to level of service E, it could be even higher.
You were saying D as in Delta.
D as in Delta, yes. So, level of service is like a grade system.
No, I understand. I couldn't be Bravo or Delta is, but I couldn't hear. Thank you.
So would you say a new study based on that information that you can provide or not?
I don't believe it would substantially alter.
I can't go through what the level service but it's in seconds, not minutes.
I was going to say, I think most of the rest of the comments can be addressed just through a written response. Mostly minor, moderate comments, but the sewerage and the parking are by far the largest concerns.
Thank you, Matt. Just before you leave this project, any of my colleagues have any further questions for Matt? Does the applicant have further questions for Matt right now? Anything that couldn't be resolved through emails and discussions of his written comments? Okay, good. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ayer?
Anyone else?
Yeah.
In the board?
Chief Johnston? Would you be willing to, yes, if you could walk us through the fire's perspective?
Sure. For the record, I'm Tim Johnson, the fire chief here in Ayer. As you saw in my memo, I had some of the comments, and I can go through and highlight them and then answer any questions that they might have. So I think for us, the biggest concern is, and we've had, as I mentioned in my memo, we've had some early dialogue with the emergency access point, which is as you enter that, to the right, what it's made up of, which I've heard tonight, who maintains it in inclement weather. But the biggest concern we have, as we've had in the beginning, was what fire apparatus can navigate that particular area. And as we've had early talks with them, we've asked for a swept turn analysis, and I guess one of the questions we didn't know at that point was, what ladder truck it would be, and now that we know we're getting a new one, that ladder truck wheelbase has changed. And so I forwarded 2 of those engineering records from the manufacturers of them so they could give us a swept turn analysis to let us know whether, one, it would be our primary engine and our ladder truck would actually fit down that access road. And once you get to the end of the access road, I have a hard time believing we would be able to make that swing with the parking spots there, but I guess that's what the swept turn analysis would be able to confirm or deny, whether that is something it's capable of doing. And we actually networked a little bit. We have our team of myself, the deputy chief and fire prevention lieutenant, kind of looked at everything. So rather than just having us, we kind of reached out to some of our fire prevention partners, and their concern that they raised to us is where they've dealt with bigger projects like this as a larger town, is that even if you lose a couple of those spots, people still tend to park in them. So if you are in need of an emergency, people may end up, if there's no parking, like an area that's blocked off for, turning radius, they still may take them. So I guess my lead off would be the swept turn analysis is real important to see if that emergency access works for us.
Are you talking about that curve?
Yep, that all the way to the right. As you enter, I think it's an overhang, and you would go immediately to the right.
Right there.
Yep, that right there.
Okay.
That's correct. That's what we consider the emergency.
Because they gotta go up.
To have the front left corner of the truck and the middle of the truck touching the opposing
Yeah, well,
walls.
like I said, we provided everything.
You just can't hang off the sides of the truck on the
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
The swept turn analysis will be able to tell us now that we know what particular apparatus, because we didn't give them our original ladder truck, and the wheelbase of the new one is slightly larger.
Yeah. So we did, Chief Johnson did say we did talk about this early on, and he said that the size of the truck would be a little bit larger than the original one he gave us. The truck that we used represented in this turning analysis was larger than the large one. So, and I don't have the numbers and wheelbases, but we can certainly provide all that. This turning analysis is based on a truck larger than his future large truck that he anticipates. So it does, not only does it's able to meet all the turning, but we've also provided, if you were to use the emergency access around, you could still do a T turnaround and come back out that outside access and never have to get underneath the building if that's what the emergency dictated. So, and this was not submitted as part of the planning board plans, but we can certainly provide that along with the axis truck dimensions and all the things to make sure everyone's satisfied with the trucks that we're using.
And while we're on that, was there, because I can see more medical emergencies than anything down there, was there access, like I know there's emergency vehicle access for police, if there were a medical emergency, would your expectation to be to park on West Main and kind of navigate through to wherever, or is the expectation the ambulance would pull into a spot inside where they would be able to park and load their equipment? Go to, say, the apartment that it would be.
I think it was both based on our conversations and other projects. The same applicant dealt with another project down the street, and it was requested to have a couple of dedicated parking spots for emergency vehicles. So that's what this is about, to provide those apart from the rest of the parking. And obviously, if the ambulance has to park here in interior, it has room to do so. But we did this, we provided these two as requested, thinking that this would meet the needs of those emergency vehicles, ambulance, fire, etc. And obviously, an ambulance will also be able to navigate all these turns if the fire truck can as well. So,
Drew, can I just point out also
Yeah.
that
Sure.
the drive lane immediately behind the building is extra wide? No.
Behind the service court.
By the.
Behind the
all way
retail
against-
shops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct. So that's,
there's an entrance to the elevator core right there.
that's very long and extra wide, so if emergency vehicles needed to park there, we don't see that being an issue. They could park up against the building and there would still be a traffic lane for cars that pass through.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, quite honest, I know we discussed the project earlier in the other part of the street, just, it's tough to get an advanced life, that's ambulance 60 feet away from the building. And,
If I might
and we often have multiple vehicles show up at the same time because of the way that everything's staffed, and it works really well, but, yeah.
And if I might add, I guess our overall view of this too is we've become somewhat like one-dimensional, because if the building's on fire, we're not driving underneath it. I mean, it's common sense if you think about it. I understand there'll be fire protection, we can talk about that as we get on the road. But depending on the emergency, so everything basically would be, I would assume, a sprinkler connection, which we would certainly be out here to start, if there would be a fire. But it certainly does get one-dimensional because there's zero access on this side. And you're limited here because you're going to be so close to the building, and I'm not sure, there'd be some apartments here, you'd have some windows here, and this is open, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be our top concern, would be this access and being one-dimensional when it comes to fire operations. And then, like I said, we did talk about cars being underneath the building, and we didn't really get into that too much in our early conversation, but certainly that does operationally, we're not a large metropolitan department, we're small people out the door with 4, we rely on callback people and on mutual aid partners, so we don't pull up with 20 to 30 people. If there's an incident, we'd hope to mitigate it and keep it small, but those are the challenges that I see if there's a car fire underneath the building, for instance. But we can certainly talk about fire protection, which was mentioned. Yep, which is mentioned in there. But something else that we were talking more about it today, are there any EV spots or charging stations that are going to be required as you move along for, our green vehicles? And as you mentioned too, which is really prevalent, in larger cities, is that if you have a bike room of those e-bikes, are they charging batteries in it? So that's a very, big highlighted thing, in larger cities, that there's a lot of fires from charging bikes, if that would be something that would be included in that bike room.
Yes, Nathan.
Question for the chief.
Yep.
What do you recommend, given your one-dimensional concern? How would you address that?
It's early on, it's one-dimensional, but I certainly would be enlightened to hear there's certainly fire prevention regulations and rules that they would be, would see down the road in regards to fire protection in the parking areas, whether there's standpipes, there would be sprinklers throughout. So that would be covered under the existing fire code. So there's some fire protection. I don't know what would be designed in that parking area. That's something we could have a dialogue on.
So you would see a solution where there's only front access to a engulfed building. You could find a solution to that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
There's certainly, but it certainly does, if you think about that, like here, everything, a lot of it, when it comes to firefighting per se, ends up being out in front of this building. So, this side, keep in mind, there's nothing for us on this side. It's the property ends right here, correct? Yeah. So there's no access. Ideally, it'd be great if you could have a road that run down the side, but that's not in this plan. So I'd be eager to see how this swept turn analysis comes around, and if it does, fit the wheelbase of our largest apparatus.
Okay. If I may,
Please,
Mr. Chairman. So I think about this building as being unique to Ayer. It is a unique style building. And I think, what do we have around here? How many floors is the hospital?
3. So this would be, other than industrial, residential wise, it would be the largest one that we have.
Yeah, so it's larger than the hospital. Do we have, so there's 2 questions. One is, do we have apparatus that can reach the roof? I'm sure we probably do. That's one question. But the other question is, are there going to be systems in this building for fire suppression that are going to require us to have new education? And Lieutenant Kozak's going to have to go out and learn how to do
Yeah, no, I think
new
some of
stuff.
the fire suppression systems are built the same that we're familiar with in all, commercial buildings. I don't think that anything would be. What would be new is having parking underneath residential living and potential hazards there. It's something that would, as you mentioned, would be unique to Ayer.
It would be the first one here in Ayer, yeah.
Yeah, and I also, the height of the residential part certainly is also unique to Ayer. And my other question that come up is, would you ever plan for solar on the roof at all?
Haven't talked about it.
Designed to accept it, but right now it's not.
Okay, so it's just something, there's rules and regulations in place, but it just, once again, just gives another unique firefighting, challenge.
More
when you
things
look-
to stumble over.
Yeah, when you look
in an
ahead, there's
emergency
certainly,
situation.
there's provisions in the code that allow for, putting roof ladders up. They have to have certain, right, it's just a question that come up when we were looking over the plan.
Thank you.
So certainly, just to recap, I certainly would be interested in that swept turn analysis, whether our apparatus would actually navigate through that parking area, as they mentioned. It's the first I saw, but would be happy to sit down with them and review that. And then we can talk about the fire suppression systems. I'm not more concerned with the residential, because there's plenty of codes. It's what happens with the parking underneath.
Okay, thank you.
Concerned about that.
Yeah, you got a comment on this plan, it's up there.
Is this for Chief Johnston?
No, for Drew, for the architect, or whoever drew that plan. I guess it's Bowler.
Oh, yeah.
Just while you're here, so on 301, which is the site layout plan, I think Key and Rep said that this distance was wider here.
Yes.
Okay, but on the drawings, it's 24 feet here and it's 24 feet there. So Key, and how much wider is it? The aisles are 24 feet. And this is dimensioned at 24 feet.
24.
So the drawing on 301 doesn't seem to jive with some of
Sorry, I'm in
that.
the wrong, it doesn't switch over.
That's narrower than the other plan, I think. Unless it tricks your eye, it's plus.
I'm trying to zoom in here. Where's my plus? Is that-
Right in the middle up top.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, all the drive aisles are 24 feet.
24.
Everything's 24.
Right, yeah, I guess you're right. But there is a sidewalk there, but you're right, the drive aisle. There is hatching, there is a little bit of hatching, but that's not a lot.
It just doesn't look the same when you,
The issue is that it's actually laid out for a one-way loop. So the cross aisle will be required a traffic passing lane at 12 feet.
Right.
So because that's 24 feet, there's an entire additional lane because you're not sending two-way traffic along the building.
Right.
So
So-
one-way
No,
loop,
I'm-
so you can see up at the top.
I'm talking about the drawing that was just up there from the fire department, which showed the turning radius.
Swept turn analysis.
If you go back to that, it appears that it's wider on this than, maybe it's just my eye. And then Kean said it was wider, so that's what I'm trying to find out. I don't think it is wider.
Okay.
I think it's the
Well,
same.
We'll confirm all this and submit the, up-to-date turning analysis with the laneage. But yeah, the point is, I guess, the same that if an ambulance was parked here, you could get around it.
So, sorry, Ken, let me just correct myself. So it's physically it's the same dimension. However, as Isaac just pointed out, there's two ways of traffic in between the parking spots. Along the base, there's just one lane of traffic. So essentially, there is a spare 12 and a half feet.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there further questions for Chief Johnston before we let him go? I thought you had, yeah, Tom.
So Chief, I know you said it's, the height of the building for residential is somewhat unique in here, although not the first building with that height. But you don't see that as an insurmountable problem with the apparatus we have?
No, it certainly, it makes us one-dimensional, so rather than saying the aerial ladder being able to do something on the left side of the building, it wouldn't be accessible unless that plan would be developed. And it would be more or less more labor-intensive. Certainly a challenge where, typically you have a residential building, a 24-foot ladder would reach second story, a 28-foot is the third. This certainly 4 stories, 35-foot ladder, they're heavy, it's labor intensive, so you don't have the advantage of having an aerial apparatus there. Potentially on the eastern side, you can get back there and get to some windows on that part of it, but certainly on the western part, it poses challenge, but it's certainly something we have the tools and equipment to do.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Just, Chief, this might be also for the Chief of Police. Do you have any concerns or methods to address evacuations?
No, the fire alarm systems that are required generally take care of all that, given both the mixed use occupancy. They'll have to meet those code requirements, both for the retail and the residential part.
I'm concerned more about the flow of people versus the notification to the people.
Yeah, I would assume they probably have a little bit of experience. They would have an area that they would be evacuated to is generally.
There's 3 stair cores in the building, so 2 drop in, 1 at each wing, north side of the wing, and then 1 at the elevator core. So there's
Right.
good
But every,
movement, it's capacity to get people out of the building.
but they can't congregate in the north. There's really no room to congregate. Right, they have to come south.
Yeah, well, they have, the plan shows the sidewalks that run out along the perimeter of the building, so they come back to the street side.
Okay, there's side access to get to the
Yes.
streets.
Generally experience when people evacuate, you all want them to go in one area so you can make sure they're accounted for and so forth. So I would assume, in some plan, at least when you become a new tenant, they must be versed on where they would go, say if the fire alarm would go off.
No stairs, they don't direct the occupants to go inside the courtyard or the parking area, they're all out to the perimeter of the building.
Thank you, Chief Johnson, appreciate it. Chief Gill?
Good evening. For the record, Brian Gill, Chief of Police Air.
So what's on your mind, Brian?
So I got a couple things. Some of them have already been talked about, but I want to reiterate them as a concern of mine. So one of the first bulleted concern I have that's in the memo that is in the packets is the emergency vehicle access and the emergency parking areas. From the get-go, I have a problem with having a one-way in, one-way out system for rapid response into any building. I think there should be an alternative entranceway. And no matter, I know there's some talk about on the right-hand side of the entrance as an alternative way, but you still have to access initially the same point.
Right, that's right.
So if there is something that's happening catastrophic right there, we've eliminated both entranceways.
Because both of these depend on this. This or this depends on this, right?
Correct. So that's been a concern of mine, from the beginning, as to that, and partially the reason why we have that, that alternative offshoot driveway that leads back into the open space parking area. One of the other things that was incorporated as part of one of my concerns was the emergency vehicle parking, which always, when we have a larger project, seems to be an afterthought. And we had 2 spaces added into this. And I guess hearing tonight, that's supposed to be for a combination of police and fire response. I can tell you that most disturbances, we're going to have at least 2 police officers going. The experience of having a 4th floor response is something that is going to be entirely brand new for the Air Police Department and for the Air Fire Department. Because that puts us very far away from our cars. It puts us very far away from anybody that's not familiar with responding. We have a mutual aid agreement with all our surrounding towns, and this is, to try and explain where we are in certain parts of this building, could be a delay in that. So to force us through the one-way access and then to kind of funnel us to the back of the back of a parking area is, I think, counterintuitive to our mission, is to get there as fast as possible and to address any issues. The other part of this too is, that's our emergency parking area. If there's any type of a restaurant or anything in the front side, we're going to be funneled over there and then having to come around the front of the building. If we have to park on the street, we're going to take up a lane and we're going to create a traffic issue out there. So that's my first bulleted concern I have, with this. The number of spaces allocated for emergency parking and their locations and the one-way in, one-way out, best way I can describe it. The next bulleted concern that I have or remark is The parking study. I have a fundamental issue with the parking study. Based on what's called the inner core community, which is Boston, Cambridge, Chelsea, Malden, Everett, and Melrose. Nothing that resembles Ayer or its surrounding communities. And I think this board touched upon it, that those communities have public transit readily available in multiple forms. We're talking about a possible bus route that isn't set in stone, so I'm not even sure if we should be taking that into account in our, with our transportation here. Is Ayer different than our surrounding communities? Yes, we've always kind of classified ourselves as an urban-esque community, but we're not an inner city community or an inner core community. And I think we need to really be cognizant of our parking endeavors here, and basing it on a study that has, in my opinion, zero to do or resemble Ayer. We've talked about the 172 spaces for 170 residential units. On my initial concerns, I just brought up, creative parking, and I think we kind of talked about that tonight. I'm going to tell you that if we probably look out there tonight on our open streets, we probably have people parked over lines in areas that they're not supposed to, and we have plenty of parking out there. We're going to be funneling people in there, and I don't think we should be planning on not everybody having a car. I think what we should be planning on is at least everybody having a car, every residential unit. The parking spaces, if somebody, especially in the area of the swept turn analysis or any of our access routes in or out, if cars start getting creative and thinking they can fit here and thinking they can fit there, it is going to be a nightmare, just in parking. Add us trying to get into an emergency. I think that's going to be a problem. I think that the parking there really needs to be closely analyzed, and I truly believe that a separate meeting on that would probably be in order. Not to mention, so we have two parking spaces extra in this model. So out of 170 units at any given time, that allows for 2 guests, and that's not taking into account my next bullet. So out of 170 people, they have to coordinate who's got a guest tonight. We touched upon the parking spaces allocated for the commercial units. According to our zoning regs, that there should be allocated parking spaces. Tonight was the first I heard about this kind of flex parking idea. I strongly suggest against having it. This should be a set in stone parking model that we should be adhering to. And this is just for the people that are working there. For any comments about we can use, and take into account the on-street parking, that isn't anybody's to take into account for parking. That is the town of Ayer's public access parking. And once we start saying you can have this, you can have this, we're going to be dealing with that issue all across town. In our downtown Main Street, we often have to deal with the complaints of, well, this is my spot, this is for my customers, this is for this. It's not. We have to we have to address that every now and then. So for any entity to take ownership of our public parking is wrong. So I think that anytime we hear that in any type of development, that we should just keep deferring back that is public parking, transient parking, which is generally 2 hours in the town of Ayer. That's coming and going. So those we can consider for the customers to be using. So what this plan doesn't take into account is the people that are going to be working there. That on-street parking shouldn't be calculated for that at all. So I don't, so now, and I think Mr. Diskin had touched upon that is taking away, once we start factoring in the square footage of the commercial space underneath, that it requires by our zoning certain amount of parking, that we're gonna start taking away from those parking spaces. So now we're exasperating some of the earlier bullets that I have. And what's gonna happen is when we start running out of parking spaces, and we've seen it in parts of town, and we've had to address it through residential parking restrictions, is we've had to go through all the parts of town to say, you can't park here unless you have a dump sticker. So people stay out of the neighborhoods. That will happen. You know, and especially in a snow removal process, that we're gonna be telling these cars, because a plow can't clean at least the open spaces there, which I don't know how many there are, but I'll take a quick guess at, you know, a quick 40. So we gotta tell 40 cars to take off while they do snow removal. So where are those cars all gonna go? So, you know, we're already gonna have parking issues, let alone, you know, if that's all required, where are these cars all, you know, gonna go for the parking removal process? And the lastly is the traffic study that was used. We touched upon it tonight. There's you know, I guess there's some conversation on a previous study which had lower numbers. Well, what we should be saying is, okay, wherever those previous studies were, well, I'll take the lower numbers, but their higher numbers that were done during the construction, those are low numbers. So we should be requiring a new study. People were avoiding that roadway because that was atrocious. That was, you know, nobody wanted to drive it, and we saw that in other parts of town. So yes, the previous studies were quite possibly low, and we've noticed it in our in our traffic control at Park and Main Street. We have a ton more traffic that's coming from Shirley, that side. I'm not saying it's from Shirley, but from that side, and what's happening is that GPSs are taking over and getting people to the most direct route, and that happens to be that way when Route 2A, especially in the morning. So I would absolutely recommend that we require an additional parking study, and do that sometime in the fall when we have all our traffic moving, everybody's back to work, all the buses are moving, all that stuff. So that's my thing.
Thank you, Chief. Do my colleagues on the board have any further questions for Brian? How about the applicant? Yes, please.
So Chief, and I respect your comments on the parking, and obviously we're gonna, you know, work on getting answers to all of those parking issues. The one way in and one way out, you know, and I appreciate that concern too, but I think of a short, single cul-de-sac would be in a similar situation. I know when I was on this board going way back, the concern was a tree coming across and blocking the way. So what type of emergency, like, because you're not gonna have a tree come across there. So I kind of think it's similar to a short cul-de-sac with one way in, one way out.
Well, you know, and there's not gonna be a tree that's coming down, but this is a short cul-de-sac that has 170 houses on it. So this isn't a cul-de-sac. So what could happen there, I don't know. Car accident, anything, but let's just take a fire in that one spot, whatever's above there.
You got a trash room there, people putting sense down trash chutes, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I can't predict what's out there, I'm just, you know, it's the ones that you can't predict that always get you. You know, I was hoping that on the redesign, and I guess with the property lines, it's just not feasible for this project as it's designed right now, is I was hoping that there would be an alternative access completely separate from that initial access point. I think, as you remember, one of my concerns was actually going under a building as a primary access, and talking with my counterparts, Chief Austin and Dan Vinskowick, that, you know, that's, you know, not as a big a concern, and more from the fire chief that, you know, he could get his cars under there. So we were really concerned with the overhead, so I kind of went along with it. But my concern is just that one central access point for there.
Good. Anything else for the chief?
Thank you, Chief Brian.
Chief,
Yep.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Chief, I know you had referenced in your comments about concerns about the site and turn, site distances, is it, from the?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, I forgot.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, maybe we could touch upon the site distance.
If I could just tell you what my concern is coming, mainly, I guess, coming out, but it would be coming in and out. What are the sight lines? Because I tried to see it on the renditions, the street view renditions, and I couldn't tell. I mean, we have the I guess some sort of thing in the, I don't know what that is in the middle.
It's a hatching for sidewalk, so maybe this is a better of how open your view is. You know, you're coming out here. I don't know if I'm at the right exit, but I'm about right. I mean, this is all open. This is a hatching on the other plan that might be deceiving, but that's sidewalk. This is all open sidewalk.
So and that's what, would you say 15 feet?
15 feet from the right of way plus sidewalks and parking and.
So that puts us at longer than a typical car.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you get right here, I guess, how wide is this this here? So when you're coming out, because we have some streets in Ayer, when you come right out, you actually have to come out and almost take a right-hand turn. So there's no gradual access into a road. And so that combined with, I don't know what's happening here. There's a couple trees in some of the renditions that I've seen that are here. So I don't know what that's going to do to the sight lines there. And what parking's going to do to any of that on street parking.
I mean, we can provide sight distances. You're right. I suppose they're not provided here, but without getting into and trees can be relocated if we do propose.
Yeah, and it's so I guess my concern with that was kind of twofold, is taking a look, down the road and try to figure out, trying to get out, especially if you have to take one of the sharper turn, and vice versa coming in. How wide is that? I know it's there, but compared to other areas, do you have to take a right turn to come in, as opposed to a gradual turn, as with a lot of areas? I know that a lot of this stuff in town is that the driveways are getting smaller, and you have to take a more direct and precise entrance into an exit out of an establishment. So I just want to understand what that looks like, and in the artist renditions, I can't get a feel for it yet.
I think it's 24 feet wide, which is wider than a normal street today. We're paving at 22 feet.
Right.
And the radius could be controlled on the street to make sure that you could turn in there. I think they're going to have to end up striping down the middle, maybe putting a stop bar in. I mean, there's going to be a number of things that you're going to have to do.
The width currently is 28 feet, so it's wider even than two traffic lights.
What did you say again?
28. 28. So it's wider than a 24 drive aisle, I believe, with the curb cut.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
24.
24?
Yeah, 24.
Your curb cuts here are based on DPW standards, right?
That's right, and we would,
pretty wide.
And this would need to be coordinated with DPW, including these radiuses. I believe that they're appropriate right now, but we could certainly work with the town to make everyone comfortable. But
so I guess maybe what was confusing to me was, what are those hash marks that are, I guess, in West Main Street? What is all
this parking? No. Sorry. Saw cuts for utility. Yes, correct. And limit of work. Limit of work. So they're not going to be there at the end of the day. They're just references to
It's just going to be filled in cracks on the road.
Right. Exactly.
But and one of the things is, Chief, you talk about this. You got a response. First car gets there, turns to go in. You got a building resident or a retail customer coming out. They're starting their car up. They're taking a turn to come out here. They're fumbling with their seatbelt. They're fumbling with their phone, figuring out what's going next. They're coming out that alleyway, that driveway, kind of in the middle, and we got one of your people going in, hot foot, trying to figure out what to go on. So I just think about that meeting in that alleyway. I know.
How can you figure that?
I mean, I would only say one more thing, that this is obviously one way in, one way out. This is obviously an additional access outside of the building. Mm-hmm. And I know there's traffic concerns in the street, but an emergency is an emergency. You can park in the street and access the building, assuming it's not on fire, but for other criminal activity, whatever might go on, there's other accesses to the building around the sides and not a vehicle, but, you know, emergency personnel can get in there and deal with things other than, you know, our main vehicle access point. So these are in addition.
I'm going to ask a question while I have you and Drew.
Sure.
So this, I do have some strange ideas, so bear with me. Would it make any sense to think about this coming to the street or to the sidewalk instead of bending in like that? Moving the transformer, of course, that would be easy. But thinking about this line keeping right along the property line down here, then you'd have to develop, you could drive right over a curb, like it could be a, you know, it wouldn't have to be a vertical granite curb. It could be a slope granite curb. We just drive right, so the emergency access wouldn't need to go in and then take a right. It could go straight in
We
along the...
considered this early on, and this was that was one of our alternatives. And when we met with fire and everything, this seemed to be an acceptable alternative. You know, it was more of an issue of aesthetics.
Yeah, okay.
So I think, you know, I don't want to speak for Keenan and the whole team, but, you know, we can revisit that if that helps.
Does that make any difference?
The situation.
I mean, it's different. I mean, it's definitely
it's separate.
Different than, you know, it's than having one spot, you know, going in the same spot and then branching off.
I don't know.
I mean, I'd have to see it with, you know,
We could
not
just-
do anything. But, you know, just to follow up on the sightline part, I would like to understand what that looks like coming out. I mean, I've come out of some parking garages, which is what I'm envisioning. That when you're coming out, you're coming from wall, and then you're out on the street trying to come out. That's what I want to see.
It's 15
It's
feet.
actually open, obviously, on
Yeah, it's like
the
good
right
15
side of that access, right?
It's got about 15 feet.
20 feet when you count the sidewalk.
Traffic, the
Yeah.
parking lane. So you're well 20 feet past the base of the building before you're into the road.
And this is all open. Oops.
Yeah.
Touchscreen.
Touchscreen, wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's try this again. Nope.
Yeah, I'll be all you.
Get it.
Yeah.
But this,
Does your right hand know, does your left hand know what his right hand's doing? That's
I am
the
left-handed,
question.
but I've been
this
trained.
is, that side is open. There are a few columns that we maneuver around, but from a visibility.
There's no building here, is what Dale's
Visibility
saying.
standpoint, it's wide open.
There's no building here.
Right, but we do, you know, we're happy to work with the DPW. We were concerned about the curb cuts around the property corner, but also the utility of that transformer. They require that immediate access to it. So as we can work through those components, we're certainly happy to develop that further. Even with the two, we were always sort of sensitive about the two emergency spots that are located up back. You know, we can work with you guys. We have some flexibility to
What about this spot
maneuver.
right here? Why can't that be?
Well, this is
marked off, that other spot.
right. Well, the daily access, the way it was designed was in a non-building engulfed fire. Your daily emergency access would be straight back, and the fire truck can park back there or emergency vehicles can park back there, so they're open. Like I said, they do have the ability to park in this. It's a wide enough street here. To park there. I mean, if we move a couple of handicap spots in a certain area and provide two spots there for your emergency vehicles, you know, those are minor adjustments that we're willing to work with you. We made an attempt at some, you know, trying to consolidate the emergency locations, but I don't think we need to hear you. We want to work with you to figure out how to fine tune those pieces. I don't think that's a project killer, right?
Anything else for Chief Gill? Thank you, Brian. Now, I know it's getting late, and we're all a little weary, but I think the important thing is that that while we have the talent here and the representatives of the department, I would like to hear from as many of them as possible, make that priority number one for today's meeting. I was thinking...
We have no problem staying as long as it takes.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking, Alicia, could you... Hi. So we've been fixated on the parking, traffic, and they are important stuff, but I think there's another dimension to this project, which is the affordable housing units, and this is going to be an issue. But what I'm hoping is that just an introduction to your comments and just set the stage for what we can anticipate and what the issues are. I think that we would all be grateful.
Yes, and Alicia Hersey, Community Development Program Manager, for the record.
May I ask you to speak a little louder, please?
Oh, okay, sorry. So, my memo to you was just reiterating, because this is our first inclusionary zoning project, and it's landing on the planning board to make sure that all the regulations are met, and there's paperwork with affordable housing and inclusionary housing, and so that is part of what I wanted to highlight for the board and for the applicant. And the zoning states that it's 1 in 5 units, with the planning board having the right to offer 2 bonus units to make it 1 in 7, but it's planning board discretion. So that's something that you're going to be talking with the applicant on. That is your responsibility on that. The other things that came up is that we really need to be able to manage what these units, the only way they count for our state numbers, and we are trying to get to the 10% affordable housing within town. And we were very close to it, but we've lost a number of units because at the beginning of these programs, they were putting in 15-year regulations, and now they're really looking for 50 to in perpetuity. We've written this law that it's in perpetuity, but that is also planning board discretion, and you can make that decision on how you're writing that. All those regulations would come in a LIP agreement, a regulatory agreement, and it's an agreement made with, it's no longer DHCD, but the Department of Housing and Community Development has changed its name, and at this moment I can't come up with it. It just happened in the last 3 weeks or so. And the applicant and the planning board. So that's something that you have to put, that it would be, we would need the planning board to put into your agreement with the applicant, okay? So we need a LIP regulatory agreement, and we also need, affirmative fair housing and residential selection plan. And that would be for them to count as a LIP unit, they have to have an affirmative fair housing and selection plan, and how every time an affordable unit comes available, how that person is selected and how is recorded, and making sure that it goes to equally anyone who is qualifies. Now, I did have some members, we have a number of members here on the board who also sit on our Affordable Housing Trust and committee and things like that. So you guys know a lot about affordable housing, so you guys know how to do this, and I have complete confidence you'll be able to put it together well, and with my office and the state, we can put these agreements together. But I do feel, and it is written in our zoning bylaw, that these should be put together and agreed upon before permits are issued. Building permits are issued. So it's something that we need to get together. So there's a couple of things that you're going to have to agree upon in your discussions, and one is how many housing units are going to be affordable. According to our town zoning, they have to be 80% AMI. If you want anything lower than that, that would be part of your discussion, but the requirement in the zoning is 80% AMI. You need to discuss how long they are in place for, whether it's in perpetuity for this project, for this building, or anything else. And let me see, and the 2 agreements. Oh, and I did have a trust member come in from this board and talk to me about the possibility of having Ayer resident priority or preference. And the state allows there to be an agreement that when you're having a lottery for a unit, then they can go first to a resident up to 50% of the units. Now, when you perpetuate that, I mean, a resident is only somebody who currently is living in town. That's how it's seen. It could be for a resident of Devon's or Ayer, if you wanted to talk about that. That's just a question on whether you think that the town needs to put that in there, whether it'll be a positive for the town and for the development as far as how people perceive the development, if a resident can have preference up to 50% of the affordable units. That's something, once again, that discussion needs to be happening between the board and the project development team. Okay, does anybody have questions for me?
So I just wanted to clarify, so Tom, none of this is news to you, right?
No.
Of course, I just wanted to confirm that. Did you have any questions? First, my board colleagues, you have any questions for Alicia? I just want to assure Alicia that we will be in touch with you to work through the
Okay.
details. And I know you've offered to give us like a mini seminar, and we will take you up on that as part of the process.
Okay.
How about the applicants have questions for Alicia?
It's not a question, just a comment. Alicia's been very helpful all along, and I anticipate that we'll be working very closely together to work through all of this. And I don't foresee it being an issue for the project.
But my decision is not whether it's 1 in 5 or 1 in 7. That's this board's decision. You need to talk to
Your
that.
guidance and helping us understand
Okay.
the process.
Yes, absolutely. And so I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands some of the questions that they're going to be dealing with on this.
Thank you.
Okay?
Much appreciated. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thanks.
Office of Economic Community Development, have any comment, wish to go over the comments? No comments at this time? And I also believe that the town management, the town manager, and I would invite both Robert and Carly, if you don't mind, as a duo. Do you guys want some time to discuss some of the comments that you made?
The boss tells me I can go. So. Just in the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. First, as you can see, demonstrated tonight, both by the interdepartmental review that you've received, as well as the presence of various of the department heads tonight. As the town manager, the town's departments, we are committed to working with you and the applicants on this project, which is a unique project, and I would argue a transformative project for Ayer. And the challenge with transformative is good in many ways, and there are many exciting possibilities and opportunities with this project. Same, however, it does, as discussed and in the review and when we conducted the internal land use review, there are some fundamental challenges and concerns, and I'm not gonna, and you heard many of them tonight, but it comes back down to, in essence, the size of the site and the amount of parking. Now, this board knows that, as it stands, without the applicant seeking relief, a project of this magnitude should have 289 spaces. They're asking for 172 out of 170. Ultimately, that's up for this board working with the applicant to decide if that's even possible and what type of concessions and so forth needs to be made. So I would like to iterate, I think the point that was already said, that a dedicated meeting just to the issue of parking, as well as a parking independent, parking analysis, I think is warranted. And because some of the things that there are assumptions that are presented that are assumptions, they're best practices, they're concepts of planning such as transit-orientated development, et cetera. They're comments of the studies that have used more in the Metro West. But we have a great chasm I think we have to breach, which is between the theory and reality. And there is a fundamental concern about the impact of the parking. What does that mean not only for the project, but for the town, for the quality of life? And the concern of many departments is the town should not bear the burden of managing, this parking issue. So in the interest of time, I will say to you, Mr. Chair, and the board, that the department heads are committed to working with the applicant, as you've seen. They're committed to working with the planning board and to being here, even, you know, I applaud them for being here late into the night to find the solutions to this. But we have to, on both sides, be willing to look at both sides of this parking issue as to how much can actually be done on the available site that can be done safely, effectively, and in the best interests of not only the town, but the applicant. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity. We remain available, and as the planning board knows, our town planner, Danny Ruiz, officially starts on Monday, July 17th, and he has been briefed and is following all of this through you.
I'd like to respond to the comment about parking, because I feel that we have two numbers that are both wrong. And here's what I mean. I think that the 289 is predicated on a model of suburban development that is aging out, and it's probably too high. And my feeling is that I would hate to take what we've called a transformative opportunity and then burden it with the expectations of the past. That doesn't seem reasonable. On the other hand, the 172 is perhaps in advance of where the reality of Ayer is. So I think that realistically, in terms of expectations, we're going to arrive at a compromise. Probably is what's going to ultimately happen. I can't dictate that. I wouldn't want to. But I think I want to set a realistic expectation that we're going to have to find a compromise between those two. Something that is appropriate for the 21st century, but it also acknowledges the reality of on-the-ground life in Ayer, how people really behave. And we haven't found that ground yet, and I think that we need to have further discussion to arrive at that. Perhaps it's a parking study, an independent parking review, I think, or analysis, I think it could be a step in the right direction. But I think the overall expectation is there's probably somewhere in the middle that we need to find and work our way to get there. Does the applicant have any questions for Robert before he leaves the table? No. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
I want to ask my board members this question. Do you think we're ready for the conversation to talk about what kind of studies we'd like to ask our town planner to craft RFPs for? Is that a discussion that we're ready for tonight, or should that be deferred to our next meeting?
I defer it.
You would defer it?
Let them respond to the comments that were made and provide analysis and updates, and then we can decide.
I see Jeff and Nathan nodding your heads. I think so too. I was hoping to have that discussion tonight, but I feel that given the complexity of the issues that have been surfaced tonight, and also that this is something I would like to have the town planner at the table to go for the active back and forth. So I would postpone the discussion then of the RFPs for studies to a later time. That said, any further, what are your expectations, I'm talking to the applicant, in terms of your ability to get to respond to really quite a deep set of comments? Do you think that you'd be prepared in 2 weeks, or should we anticipate really a month, that 2 meetings out?
I think we can prepare written responses to these comments within 2 weeks. However, maybe give us 24 hours to think about that, but I think we could at least present a refined package in 2 weeks. And my thought then is, does that give you guys enough time? If we submit it within a week, that only leaves you with a week to review it and distribute it to all departments.
I would feel more comfortable if we anticipate giving you sufficient time and then everyone else sufficient time to say 2 meetings out would be more appropriate. Nathan?
It sounds like there's a interest in having a parking-centric meeting. Is it possible to
make the next meeting?
Yeah.
How's that sound to the applicant? So you'd have 4 weeks, 3 weeks, and then us a week. So 2 meetings out for the responses. But do you think we would be prepared to have an in-depth discussion on parking and the complex parking issues that are what's 2 weeks from today, the 25th?
I would request more time for the deeper parking discussion.
Okay, that's fair. So we look in two meetings out, instead of July 25th, the first August meeting is the next meeting for this? Does that sound reasonable to everybody at the table here? Okay.
I believe that's going to be August 8th.
Okay, great.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Board comments?
Yes, I absolutely want to. All along, we've been having board comments, but more board comments, please, Ken.
You guys have anything to go?
I just want to give a brief 30,000-foot comment, too. If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm delighted to have this application. We put in form-based code and improved West Main Street, and this is really exciting. And so I have this is one of the reasons I'm on this board is more downtown development is one of my interests. So I'm grateful to have this application here. The other thing is permitting is a bear, and I understand the interest in moving quickly, and I would like to do that, but I don't. But this is our first form-based application, and it's exceeding it's exceeding the envelope. So, as much as I would like to move quickly, speaking for myself, it's going to be hard to do that. So. I expect that everybody here will help us ascend to a good solution, but it's going to take some time.
I agree. Thank you, Nathan. Ken, you had comments?
Yeah, Attorney Gibbons, you want to come up? I'm going to give you I'll give you the zoning book in case you need it. And I've got a lot of technical stuff, so we may have to put the screen back up when I get to those pages, and the drawings and whatnot. So the first thing I did was I took a look at the zoning bylaws to find out if the application covered all the requirements of the zoning bylaws as just a general view, okay? And I've got 2 or 3 things in there that I think have come up that you guys are going to have to cover. So I'm going to start with the easiest one, I think, which is we have a section 9.6, which is called land clearing and grading, and it applies to all projects that are over 10,000 square feet. So
You guys just snuck over that one.
yeah, there'll be a narrative or some description that's involved with that to show you're in compliance with that section, and it becomes part of the site plan review. So it's concurrent with site plan review. But I offer you that that's one thing you're gonna have to do. The second thing is that there's a second, I believe, overlay district here, which is not delineated in the zoning map, but we actually have a floodplain overlay district as well as a aquifer overlay district. So Tom, that's 8.22, if you look at the zoning book there. So what happens with the floodplain overlay district is it's a narrative in the zoning bylaws, and it describes the fact that any project that has, I believe it's AE in it, is going to require that's another type of permit. I think you might have to go to the Board of Appeals, but I'd have to just have Tom check it.
I'll look at that, yep.
Okay, so 8.22 for work in the AE zone of the floodplain district. And that's going to involve your retaining walls, the emergency access, footings, all the structural that goes with those areas that are in the floodplain. The only thing you mentioned tonight was the fact that you thought you were going to have to compensate for the floodplain.
That's right.
But I'm not sure if you were aware that we have this section. Lastly, we have, I have to ask you a question, it's for the architect or for the owner. What is the minimum, what is the smallest, do you have any units in the building that are below 750 square feet?
Yes.
Okay, so that's section 3, 63H1, if you want to look it up. We have a requirement in town that the minimum floor area for a dwelling unit is 750 feet. So could be going back to the Board of Appeals for that. It's a dimensional requirement. Do you get it there? 6.3H1? I figured there must be a number of studios, or all the studios could be smaller than that. So this is a problem, because this isn't, if you check it out, you find it?
On the dimensional.
No, right, section 6.3H1. Right there. So those are some of the zoning issues that I think, haven't been talked about, that you might have overlooked. They're a little complicated, but they're
Yeah, we'll check that out.
part of the requirements. You mentioned the fact that you're going to go subsequently to, under the Wetland Protection Act and the town wetland bylaw to conservation.
Right.
And you mentioned in there about the fact that we're in the NHESP, we're in a natural
Yes.
heritage. I guess the next meeting, give us an update on where you are with the no-take letter, or whatever's required.
Yes, we haven't received it, but we submitted, I believe, the wetlands consultant, who's not here tonight.
Got it.
Yes, great, got it, has submitted those documents, and we haven't received
Okay, I
that.
just think we should have it on our list, that we follow up with that, and we get a report as to how that comes out. Okay, so now we can go to the plans, which is going to be a lot of fun. So go to plan, if you can put up C301.
Barry just took off his headphones. Ken, you
Oh.
touched the mic.
Sorry, buddy. Okay, so we also have in our zoning and parking requirements, section 913, okay, which is basically off-street loading spaces and for deliveries and so forth. You're gonna have to delineate on the plan where that actually is, where you're gonna take deliveries to and from the building, how FedEx and UPS and everybody else who's making deliveries is where that's gonna be shown on this plan. I'm concerned with the fact that I don't even know how you're gonna move people in and out of the place with moving trucks to the elevators, to the third or fourth floor or whatever. Again, I think you have to show us a little bit more creativity there, how you're gonna get physically a truck in there, unload the truck, get people to the elevator core, and up with their furniture and whatnot. It doesn't seem to be, evident that there's a circulation pattern there. The next one is another zoning, part of the parking situation, parking requirements is, we have a section 917B. That's a pedestrian accommodation, which you have failed to show. In other words, the parking lots themselves, when they're this side, it's anticipated that there'd be a way for pedestrians either through crosswalks or delineated walkway areas to get from the spaces to the building. These are all so tight, there's no way to do that. You haven't shown anything like that. We need to see some kind of way that we understand how the last person in this parking area safely walks through without getting a car backing out or some kind of accommodation. It is part of our parking requirement. You didn't bring it up, so I'm telling you, if you have to bring it up as a waiver, then you'll have to talk about that. 917B. We already talked about all of the dumpsters and snow storage and things like that.
What is it that you typically look for in a parking lot like this, other than
Well,
walking
it
down
tells you
that?
under that section.
Okay.
It's written right in there.
Okay.
So if Tom goes through the section, you'll see what it talks about. But it's typically talking about a safe walkway, crosswalks that are maybe slightly raised or painted or something like that, delineated spots that indicate a safe method for pedestrians to get through the parking lot.
Okay.
It's called a pedestrian accommodation. Okay, now we're gonna get to the real good stuff. So this is Plan 401. And this is gonna be something that I'm gonna talk quite a bit about, so. When you look, you got 401 up there?
Yes.
So blow it up and bring in the ADA parking spaces. So In general, when we look at the plan, we know that the street is about 229 on the elevation, and we know the very far end of the long, I'm just gonna call it the long building, for lack of a better term, ends up going all the way down to 221, okay? The ADA parking, I'm looking at it here, is indicated to be at like 225, 31, 225, call it roughly, okay? Maybe to 226. Yet the first floor of the building is 229. Show me how you get from those ADA spaces to the first floor of the building.
Yeah, there is a step up there.
I'm talking about for people who are in a wheelchair, things like that.
There's a back entrance lobby, right? The elevators on this current design have a back and forth entrance on the elevators.
Okay.
So you walk into the lobby, you can enter right into the elevator.
So that narrow strip is going to be an elevator lobby, and the doors are going to open on both sides.
Correct.
So those elevator doors will open to the back.
That's correct.
Okay. I didn't pick that up by seeing it. It does, in fact, it's shown as a box rather than anything else, not shown. But that's what it's tended to be.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, so that's good. Get rid of that. We know you're gonna have to give us more details on the retaining wall. Some places it goes up to 9+ feet tall, and we understand we're gonna get structural drawings or some kind of method to show how you're gonna build that in accordance to what we require for building needs. Is there any mechanical equipment shown on the ground other than the transformer? Is the mechanical equipment all going to be up on the roof? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's a gas meter thing,
Right, but
bank on the left, and
no
a transformer,
physical
but no,
equipment.
yeah, they'd be on the roof.
Okay.
There is a mechanical room next to where that trash room, bike room,
Yeah,
and there's these 3 rooms right next to it.
all those are mechanical.
Mechanical, water, and IT.
Okay. Let's see. So that's all I had on the grading plan. The big thing was just figuring out people getting, so the rest of the people are going to walk up a set of steps from the parking lot, basically, because that grade is down.
Right. And this does ramp down from the street, this entrance.
Right.
And because of that 3-foot drop, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Okay, 402, the drainage plan. So now, there's only 3 catch basins shown on this print. And you guys anticipate that's enough to grab all that parking lot water? And it's all in the perimeter.
Well, remember, there's a roof above.
Yeah.
So there's only a portion that's exposed. So we're capturing the exposed portion with our catch basins. And there will be roof drains, and we'll be capturing those as well.
All right, I got a thought on that as well.
But, so that's the intention.
Okay, so we're looking to take overland from the front entrance down through this, underneath this building, in this part of the parking lot. We're not gonna drain this, but to 1 catch basin, the center section. And then the rest is 2 catch basins on the end. You really feel that that's enough to catch that parking lot right there, 1 catch basin? That's all I'm saying. It doesn't seem like enough to me, but we'll have to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, we size our catch basins for certain areas. It's something I'll certainly double check because you're bringing it up.
Yeah.
But as of today, my answer is going to be yes. I think we satisfied. Our intent was to satisfy, capturing the water based on the areas that are required.
Now, talking about the roof drains, you can see on the long building, you've got, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 roof drains shown, I guess, that hook into the subsurface, system.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you don't show any other roof drains for the front building or the balance of that long building, where they go.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to show tie-ins to that. That's always, and, well, this is a roof still. It's only, this is...
That's a big building with nothing.
Yeah, so we'll...
In the balance of the long building.
So I don't, the mapping of the roof drains is something that we don't usually get to till we're further along in the process. However, your point is taken that we'll need to tie in the complete roof. The drainage system has certainly been sized to tie in the complete roof,
Okay.
whether it's the lines are connected
So
as of this moment.
the
or something
subsurface
else.
system has been sized for that.
For the entire roof.
Now, I noticed that you submitted boring plans, but no deep hole testing. You didn't do any deep hole testing for the subsurface system.
Yeah, that's right, we used whatever the geotechnical report had available for the borings, that's right, which shows groundwater
Where did it show it? Because I thought it was like, borings went down to 17 feet.
Yeah, and they didn't.
Didn't show anything.
Right, exactly. You know, I think we assumed, I wouldn't want to quote it off the top of my head. Obviously, this wetland area is, I know that's not necessarily the groundwater, but it's significantly lower than where we're working on at the site. So I think that my point is the groundwater is significantly low and not an issue as far as our drainage chambers.
Okay, so you feel that you can go with the boring results, you don't need to do any deep hole testing?
Yes, and what we do with a lot of these applications is provide testing as needed. If the board requires more testing and want to see deep holes, we can provide that either in process or sometimes even during construction, but if you want them.
We might want to do that.
Earlier, we can certainly provide that as a condition.
Okay, thank you. Roof drains. Okay, so this is a general question, again, regarding drainage. So now, if we look at the side and the back of the building, there's nothing shown, you know, from here all the way around in this whole entire back piece.
Mm-hmm.
There's no catch basins, there's no surface, you know, drains, whatever you want to call it.
That's intended to be impervious.
Yeah, I saw that, but it's not impervious in the winter when it freezes. It's going to get ice, it's going to, you know, need a place to run. Water's going to rain, it's going to rain on top of it, and I don't know. So the whole thing you're saying is impervious.
Is pervious, yes.
Pervious,
those pavers
pervious,
are
yeah.
pervious pavers, yes.
Right.
And that was the intent of the design, yes, so that it would, A, be aesthetically better with a green area,
Yeah, right.
and also, you know, capture the water, recharge the water naturally through the ground.
Okay, so the sheet flow will just make its way around and the rest will go into the ground, basically, is what you're saying.
That's right. And, you know, as it sounds like you were aware, when we do these analysis, the water is already sheeting off, you know, on the site as it stands today, water is sheeting off there already.
Yeah.
And we're decreasing that sheet flow off.
Right.
So that's, you know, that was proven out in the report.
Okay. The only other thing I had on this drawing was it's incredible how deep this, you know, subsurface system is, and it's like 10 feet deep, maybe something like that, you know, the system somewhere in that
I know the
vicinity.
chambers are pretty sizable, but yeah.
And it only shows, I guess the manufacturer, this is a question, I'm used to seeing more than 9 inches of stone underneath that. I think it only shows 9 inches required. Is that, it's usually like a foot or 2 feet of stone below these.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to quote all these things. It does vary. They do. First of all, there's flexibility in that depth of stone.
Yeah.
Second of all, and that stone only helps you usually for recharge or whatnot. It almost becomes a structural thing when we're talking about this kind of design.
Right.
But we certainly did it within the range of the standards for this type of chamber.
So it could change when the manufacturer comes in with the final design or something.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
As like a submittal during construction. That's right. They do a final design. But that said, you know, we met the spec sheet. We deal with these chambers all the time, and we use their spec sheets and those acceptable ranges based on the depth of the chamber and groundwater and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, okay. It's pretty amazing that there's no groundwater there. That's incredible, but
Yeah.
luck out. Okay, that's what I had on that plan. So if we go to the utility plan, and I know the utility plan is, you know, it's basically an approximation of what you think is gonna go on and whatnot. My question was, again, about the gas service of the building. So it's showing 2 gas. So are you anticipating like rooftop, are you gonna have a boiler room, or are we gonna have rooftop units that have heat in them? Or how's that all gonna work? For the gas service?
Rooftop is just condensers.
Right.
That's for air conditioning? Okay, so there'll be a couple of boiler rooms or something along those lines? No?
No.
Electric heat?
We haven't got the specific with electric heat
Okay.
all the way, but say a heat pump, you know, scenario with the condensers. We have gas, right now we are talking gas appliances as well.
You are, okay. I had that too. So you may end up having to size the gas for a potential cafe, or have a stub for a cafe in the future and that kind of thing.
We'd have an MEP consultant on board by then to do such things.
Okay, that's good. So gas, potential gas appliances in the units, that's what you're talking about? Wow.
stormwater evaluation.
Oh, the one thing that, is the chief still there? Fire chief? No.
Yeah.
Both sheets are here,
I thought when we looked at this, there was a discussion of another hydrant deep in the site.
There may have been, I don't think those discussions have happened as of yet.
Maybe it was my mind that thought of it, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I missed the first meeting, but I don't recall that.
It's been mentioned, there is an existing hydrant, and again, I think we're willing to accommodate, as we've been dealing with the emergency departments, but there is an existing hydrant right here in this island.
Right.
Right in the front of the building. So if there's some accommodation that's...
I'm talking about out beyond the...
Nothing's proposed today, but I think we're open to that.
Can you guys review that with him? And I was thinking back in that corner somewhere where you get the other side of the site covered with a hydrant, which would be another water line. So that was my thought on that. Okay, now we're gonna get into some more good stuff. So if we could now go to those landscape plans.
Your PDF that I will call up.
The landscape and lighting. So.
You did the other set, yeah.
I got it here. So this is going to be an interesting one. When you go to L1, and the same on L2, this is going to be an issue that I'm going to have to straighten out with Boulder. So the lighting, I appreciate the quality of the plans. As Nathan mentioned, it's a good application and whatnot. If you notice in the mounting height, I believe it is, MH mounting height, for the fixture that's mounted on the bottom of the building, I'll call it's a G2 fixture, it looks like. That's consistently shown at a height of 17 feet, okay? Yet the site, and this is a mistake that's on the elevations, the site is drawn as though it's flat. The site is tipped by about 3 to 4 feet. So the elevations that you showed, which I think I've got it on A200, is incorrectly showing east and west and north. The only side, excuse me, and south. Wait a minute, no, south. So south is okay, north is okay. You're not showing the fact that the parking lot is going downhill substantially, like 3 to 4 feet or 5 feet, from 229 or 225 all the way to 221. So if the mounting height is shown here at 17 feet for the fixtures, that's assuming the parking lot is flat, I presume, because it's all shown at the same height, 17 feet everywhere. Yet it would vary to 17 to 22 or something, which will throw off your photometric design because the lighting will be at a different height.
Is it the same distance from the ground? I'm not sorry, but is it the same distance from the ground?
It's shown on, I'm presuming the bottom of the building is flat, so the mounting height is shown the same all the way down, yet the parking lot is dipping down, it's varying consistently down. So which would mean the mounting height of the last few fixtures would be more in the 20 feet to 22 foot height. And it may not work photometrically because your design is based on a consistent height all the way through. So you need to look at coordinating this lighting plan with the slope of the lot and double checking that how it's going to work with the elevations and the columns and everything else that goes on.
Okay.
So that's a problem, the way I see it anyway. And you're definitely showing it wrong on the A200, the elevation plan. There was a question, I guess you can work it out with the DPW. I thought it was pretty good. You're showing some street lighting to be added. And is the comment that we're going to just work that out later, what DPW is to design and things like that?
Yeah, I called into the town and spoke with the planner. They are currently reviewing some standard light fixtures, I believe. So that's something we can work with the town on.
Okay, but your preference is to have the street lighting there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So you don't want to amend that at all, you just want to leave it the way it is, okay.
Yep.
I'm concerned with, there's a fixture on the right-hand side on, this is on L2, I guess. Pull that up. Can you put up L2, the plan? So there's a fixture right here. Right there. It seems to be too close to the neighbor. I'd be concerned if I was the neighbor. So I'd like you have to look at that, maybe moving it to the other side, or just getting rid of it, or lighting it off the building. But I have a concern that whole lot line is so close to the neighbor that may throw light. Even though you're going to throw it to the ground, it still may reflect back. And don't know if you need it. Just take a close look at that if you would. There's another one, there's a bollard right by the sidewalk. You probably don't need this at all. Down here, E2. You're kind of putting one bollard down there where there's no other bollards along that sidewalk, showing on the rest of the plan. So, I mean, I
don't think it's related to the transformer, but there will be bollards in that area for the transformer, based on
Okay.
the layout today.
There'll be lighting bollards, is what you're saying?
No, the transformers would not be lit, no.
No, there'll be, the bollard I'm talking about is a lit
lighting
bollard.
bollard.
The plan
Yeah.
shows
I know you're talking about safety bollards,
Right.
yeah, stuff like that.
Just thought I'd mention it.
I'm talking about the,
Pedestrian bollard.
I guess the other thing that I didn't see here, maybe you could just add the dimension on one of these plans, maybe it's another plan, of the whole driveway along the side of the building into the back. Is it 24 feet? I guess, maybe, I'm not sure.
Actually, I did see them on another plan. They're 20 feet to 27 feet, depending on the turn.
This whole thing, where the pavers are?
Yeah, the emergency driveway.
Yeah.
If you call it that. Yeah, I did see it on one of the plans. I'm going to guess it was between
Okay.
20 and 27 feet, depending on where it's measured. But it would be helpful to have it.
Yeah, the only thing I had on the rest of the lighting was that it seemed like it was light in the back of the building. And I mean, there weren't enough lights. It seemed lighting it more with bollards, like in the back. I think there's like one B2 there or something, but could you review the back and see if that needs to be lit better, especially if it's going to be for emergency vehicles, whatever back there. Hold on.
Ken, I got a question for you. It's come to my attention, I hadn't realized this, but we do have people from the public who would like to have input. Can you give me a sense of how many more
I
comments
just
you
got
have?
one more.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when you go back to the A200 plan, that's the one I'm talking about, that needs to show those elevations, but now the columns are going to end up being, like 18 to 20 feet high in the back of the building. I'm a little concerned about that height, and if it's going to be protected somehow, a snow plow or a person not hitting a column. A lot of times, projects like this, the wall it's enclosed with a wall. The column's not necessarily completely open. But I'm very concerned with the back, where the columns now are getting taller and taller as the grade goes down. And whether that needs to be looked at as for some protection around there, or how you're going to do it.
We would typically, we're still evaluating the structural system. Concrete, we were originally thinking a concrete structure.
Okay.
Also evaluating a steel composite system. But even if we ended up with steel, we still have a concrete base for that protection issue.
Okay, just because you mean like the first 4 feet or something like that? Yeah. It just, to me, it's going to look quite odd, with those long columns compared to the front, which is lower. So as a result, the building height now will change from grade. So your drawing, which is carrying the same building height on the front and the back, you'll have to change that building height to reflect the new building height, taking into effect the grade change. So the building is going to actually be 3 or 4 feet taller in the back, maybe, from grade.
I believe there's some adjustment, that you're right, there might be a little bit of a slope, but the elevations do show the 3-foot drop to the.
They show the first one, the little one at the beginning, but not the rest of that parking lot.
We'll take a look at that.
It's good. It makes a big difference in the way that looks. The only other thing I had on the A200 was the mansard type look that's only in the, kind of on the front of the building. It doesn't go around the building.
It does wrap around the corner of the main building.
Right. But it doesn't go down that.
Extend all the way to that.
Okay. That's it for me at the moment.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
There have been people waiting patiently to speak, and I want to create an opportunity for public input. Is there anyone from the public who would like to, that has a question or a comment? Sir, please come on up. Take a seat. If you just give us your name and address.
Sure.
And
My name is Todd Johnson, and I own 193 and 199 West Main Street, and I am the abutter, and I do not appreciate all the lights that were proposed there. I am a town resident, been here a long time. I've owned that property a long time. It's 210 feet of frontage, 1.67 acres, and when I did bring it to the attention of some of my displeasure, oh, well, geez, you should sell. Well, I'm really not into doing that. I do provide housing to people that own local businesses here, and they've been tenants of mine for more than 15 years. I am also a town resident myself, and I own rental property, and I've been managing this. I have a construction supervisor's license also, and I have a lot of, a lot of issues, and I did go to the zoning board when they went from 3.5 stories, which is, this is how it was set up, to going 4.5 stories. So the issues that we have, or a lot of them, just were brought upon themselves by going from 3.5 to 4.5 stories. Now they want more housing and more parking. I also want to say that I highly appreciate the town employees that came here today, the fire chief, the police department, town manager, DPW, and all of you for your service. I expect for you people to protect the public and in the best interests of us town residents, because we're the ones that are going to live here after whatever these changes make. Now the parking issue, all these plans that we see are brought upon us, and it's already assuming that we're going to go down from, we already need 289 spots per zoning, and that doesn't include the retail parking spots. So their plans are already assuming that we're giving up, we're taking a reduction of, what's it, 117 spots, which is, let's use some numbers here, that's 40% difference. You're asking the town for a 40% difference of what is our minimum, not what we would like to have. That's our minimum, that's our starting point. So we're building houses with 2x6s. Well, we'd like to use 2x4s instead. Well, and that's what we're asking the town to do. And even in the small letter, but we're increasing our small car parking. Well, no, that you're not, because at 289 parking spots at 10%, we'd have 29 slots. Okay, now you say you're going to go from your 10%, that would give us 20 spots. So I could do pretty simple math. What we should have is at least 29, and you're going to give us 20. Really? I mean, those are issues. And as other people have already brought up, fire, police, how are we going to get back there? I mean, you're building right up to my property line. And by the way, I have a really nice walnut tree that could possibly fall over in that. We should probably have 2 means of egress into that. One way in, one way out. But that's a whole other thing. A lot of issues that I have were already brought up. How are we going to get a trash truck in there? Where's the receiving dock or the loading dock? How's an 18-wheeler going to get back there to supply a retail business? Are they going to park in front on right in the middle of West Main Street? I mean, there's no, in theory, how you did the street over was, your intention was good, but try going down it. Where's all this water going to go from the snow? Those pavers, are they going to hold the fire trucks? I mean, I don't know about you, but paved walkways, they move after a little while. You're gonna put 18-wheelers down there, or the heavy, fire trucks, emergency? I mean, to me, it looks like a fire trap, the entrance. Something goes wrong there, we can't get in there. And as someone else suggested, sure, it would be nice to have access on the other part, or not that I'm an engineer, but what if you went right down the middle and made car entrance that way and service to the right? I don't know, they'll figure it out. But a lot of this parking issues was brought upon yourselves back there by going from 3.5 stories to 4. Now you have this whole new set of requirements and more needs. you listen to some of the parking studies, the MART bus. I mean, really, if we're going to start using the MART bus more, is it going to take away from the elderly housing, the elderly people that are using that MART bus to get up to Neshoba for their doctor's appointments, their, going to the food pantry on Devon's or whatever those needs are? We're just not there to, we're not, were they going to walk a mile to the train? E-bikes? I mean, come on. This is Ayer, it's a small town. The other thing is they're also using small parking spots. Most of us have SUVs and trucks, and I mean, you can't park in there. It's gonna be a problem. And improving, over here on East Main Street, number 10, they have 7 units after the fire. They were by code were allowed to rebuild to that, which is fine. But they have very working class people, and they all have 2 cars, and the parking is all over the streets. We had to bring the police chief in, and they put parking signs and residents only, and then they were parking where their new community garden is. They had to put signs up, and that's with 7 units with an issue. Now we're going to go to 172 units. We're going to have a lot of problems. That's going to fall. All these other people are going to leave and move on to their next job, and the town residents and the managers of their departments are going to be left with the fire, the police, the emergencies, the parking, and then other people unhappy. And those are just some of my concerns, and a lot of it was covered by some other people. Did some great in-depth views that I didn't even catch, and I thought that was just wonderful. Also, with what you don't see on these pictures is on my lot and part of next door, there's a big water retaining pond. So once you start taking all that drainage and they're gonna chuck it off the back end of their lot, where do you think that's gonna wind up? I'm gonna have a bass pond, or you're gonna start to flood out my lot? And that's just not fair. And I believe we need smart building, and this may not be, this is probably the right project. It just needs more adjustment and more insight. And I think that's probably all I have to say. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to the next meeting, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Wait, before you go, did the applicant want to respond to anything that he just said?
It's all about what we're going to respond to.
Okay, I just wanted to check. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, I appreciate that. Okay, good. It's getting late. I think that we should wrap this one up. And my question is, let's confirm, are we in agreement that we should think 2 meetings out rather than 1 for the continuation of this?
Yeah, so I think we're thinking of a month for the next cycle. And I'm just wondering if we'll be able to open the special permit in 2 weeks if we get the notice out tomorrow.
What's that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Yeah, I don't think of that. So I guess we'll just make sure, you just want to make sure that the notice that has to go out for the special permit will also be ready for the month meeting, the next month's meeting.
That's the plan.
Yep. So it would be 8, did I hear?
Is it, is the first one August 8th?
Yes, August 8th.
August 8th is our first meeting in August, excuse me.
So I think I'm looking for a motion to continue the public hearing for DMG West Main Street to August 8th.
I'm so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. We will continue this August 8th.
Thank
you very much. I want to make look, a lot of people came out here tonight. It's late, it's past 9 o'clock. I just want to say thank you, all of you, for your level of commitment and service. It's much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And I look forward to seeing you again next month.
Thank you very much.
We don't have a town planner to give us project status updates, but if anyone on the board has any knowledge they want to share with us? Nope. We don't have meeting minutes ready to review, so...
We'll get it for you.
So, motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
The little big thing.
Good night, everyone.